I'm sure this isn't news to any of my viewers, but Google has deprioritized its functionality as a search engine and replaced your experience with Gemini.
Oh my god, everything is getting shittier and shittier. I fucking hate it. Every right-wing YouTube who deliberately runs misinfo could be training an AI to hallucinate about you. Yeah, I mean, that's the old school. Nowadays, this is already mass serialized. There are people who are deliberately lying, but then there's also a shit ton of people who don't know the truth, who are just acting on that lie and adding on to it. And then, to make matters worse, the place that you are supposed to go to figure out whether this is a lie or not is also lying to you.
Yeah, that's gross.
We're gonna move on to the fun.
Really
reacts.
big pie that keeps growing,
really?
and everybody can get fat. And not
Okay, we're gonna do this Ben Jordan video. The richest country's pretty mid now. There's like, dude, there is a real like YouTube commentary resurgence taking place right now with a lot of leftist and left adjacent content creators just like popping the off, putting LeBron numbers on the board. I really like it.
Too, haven't you? We've been exposed to controversies and warnings and just nonstop bad news our entire lives, but this hits different. Beneath all of these chaotic headlines that we see every single day, it just feels like something bigger is happening. Do me a favor. Try and think of just one general thing in your life that has improved in the last 10 years. Has your quality of healthcare improved? How about your quality of education, your cost of living, your insurance coverage, your privacy, your freedom? Do you have more time to do what you want to do today than you did in 2016? On this day, 1 decade ago, the Dow Jones closed at around 18,000 points. Since then, it has skyrocketed, closing today at 51,000 points. So congratulations, unless of course your quality of life is not 2.83 times better. In that case, I made a video for you to watch. But this video isn't about evil CEOs or how capitalism and wealth inequality are out of control. You probably already knew those things. This is a theory, maybe a conspiracy theory, but a theory nonetheless that I've been sharing and discussing and refining for years. For you, it's merely some lenses that you can try on when reading your newsfeed. It's an introduction to what comes after capitalism, something I can only call leveragism. Capitalism on paper is dependent on economic and technological growth. On paper, the idea is that everybody gets a slice of the pie, and if we make a really, really, really big pie that keeps growing, then everybody can get fat. And not only is that example kind of a literal one when we look at the American obesity epidemic, but capitalism also led to agricultural innovation and global supply chains and wealth creation
they added math
in developing
swaps.
countries that played a huge
That's
part
cool.
in decreasing
like
global
that.
hunger. It's worth recognizing that in 1970, 1/3 of the people on this planet were starving, and now that number is down to about 8.2%. How much of that achievement can be awarded to capitalism can be...
I mean, I wouldn't even say 1970s onward, but I would say that, and this is Marxist analysis as well, capitalism is a progressive force as opposed to feudalism. So it's true. It's just that we have evolved past the need for capitalism. To say that capitalism didn't do that industrialism didn't to be under any system is both correct and incorrect. It doesn't matter. That's what did it, okay? Especially, obviously, the abolition of extreme poverty, the destruction of extreme poverty directly comes from the development and redistributive policies of China. But
debated, but ignoring that this drop in...
Ben Jordan is inventing Marxism from first principles by doing, ironically, exactly what Karl Marx did, which is, you know, a reflection on the progressive trends that came out of capitalism, and then talking about how it's gone far, it's gone too far, and now everything sucks, and is, I hope, arriving at like an accurate and apt analysis of the inherent contradictions within capitalism and how that it creates this tremendous contradiction amongst these two warring classes, you know, the working class and the capital owners, and how much the consolidation of wealth in the hands and the consolidation of power in the hands of the capital owning class has created all of these tremendous excesses and issues.
Famine happened in a time when all but 4 countries rely on a capitalist structure would be disingenuous. Let's revisit that on-paper part. So, like, even if we limit our examples to Coca-Cola, who I seem to frequently use for economic examples for some reason, capitalism leads to a lot of evil shit. In 1954, Coca-Cola financially and politically supported a CIA-backed military coup of Guatemala. Then, in the early 2000s, Coca-Cola was suspected to have hired right-wing paramilitary death squads to assassinate union leaders. Coca-Cola is the #1 top plastic polluter in the world, despite their constant marketing of their sustainability goals. They've caused water shortages in Latin America and India by depleting local aquifers. They have bottling partners that have been repeatedly accused of human rights violations and suppressing union organization. They have Israeli franchises that have sourced their resources from occupied Palestinian territories, which is considered illegal under international law. Is the existence of capitalism the problem here? Most progressive people would answer that question with a resounding yes. I think it's debatable. I would argue that most of these things that Coke did violate the rules written by capitalist governments.
Oh God! Oh no! Don't tell me real capitalism hasn't been tried. No.
Which is a byproduct of jealousy. Since capitalism is frequently associated with hoarding more resources than your neighbors, we tend to associate capitalism with being a douchebag, and that's totally fair. So much so that we even get popular memes and fake Karl Marx quotes like, "There is no ethical consumption under capitalism," which is a completely sane and reasonable thing to shout at lemonade stands and farmers markets. The reason I'm discussing this to begin with is to highlight what American capitalism means on paper, and how apparently nobody has seen paper in decades.
Did you react to Louis Rossman? Louis Rossman hates me. He's like a dick rider, isn't he? Maybe he's changed his
last
position.
video was what happened between the Great Depression.
Ben, on the other hand, does not, and I really like Ben.
Battle, my
When I say
children.
boo.
And the 2000s. Let's go back to 1933, and I think we need a whole tone scale for this. Hey, I'm in 1933. Shit sucks. Nobody has any money. I've been eating shit like dandelions and potato soup and a bunch of poorly thought out hot dogs. All this happened because a bunch of people got really greedy and borrowed more money than they could ever pay back and invested it.
Bro, who made those, all those instruments behind you got them? I mean, I know you're joking, but that is a very common argument that people actually present. And the answer always is workers, labor. Labor made them. Okay?
In wheat? What is the deal with that? Franklin D. Roosevelt's administration was both aware of capitalism's potential to increase the American quality of life, but also its potential to cannibalize itself. And it is truly remarkable to me that nearly 100 years ago, they saw the exact same mechanism that's playing out today. And this was at a time when some of your baseball watching and apple pie eating Americans were still on the fence about communism, and they had solid representation via the CPUSA. A lot of American citizens believed that the Soviet Union was a rising egalitarian society that was immune to the Western economic crisis that they were experiencing. The New Deal took this into serious consideration and ultimately wasn't about social services or directly addressing wealth inequality like the Soviet Union, but instead about sticking to the whole freedom thing and redefining capitalism in a way that would allow Americans to organically solve these problems using their own capitalist motivations. All of this kicked off with the Glass-Steagall Act of 1933. No longer would a commercial bank that provided consumer and business loans be allowed to deal with, underwrite, or invest in private securities. And investment banks would no longer be able to take consumer deposits. So to give you an example, JP Morgan was forced to start a separate business for all the risky stuff, and that eventually became Morgan Stanley. This act also created the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, or FDIC. This guaranteed that if you had money in a commercial bank and that bank failed or went out of business, you would be guaranteed reimbursement up to a specified limit. All of this, combined with a whole lot of historically progressive labor laws and a tiny little skirmish called World War II, set America up to make the most savvy financial move in the history of trade. You know those crazy conspiracy stories where the elite community members will meet up somewhere in the woods and decide how they'll control the world? That actually kind of happened. And to some degree, the economic fate of...
It still happens. All the time. It's just called Davos. It's called G10. It's called World Economic Forum to a certain degree. So it happens all the time. Throughout the year, people get together very openly. It's not a secret. They do it all the time.
You and your family was decided in that meeting. Towards the end of the Second World War in July of 1944, delegates from 44 Allied nations met in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, with the goal of designing and negotiating a post-war financial system. At the time, pretty much the entire world was economically devastated, but due to our size and geographic isolation, American soil was mostly untouched by the war. We also held between 70 and 80% of the world's gold reserves and were easily the largest manufacturing economy on the planet. The Bretton Woods Conference offered a way that countries could facilitate international trade with a trusted currency without having to lug literal bars of gold everywhere. The United States pegged the US dollar strictly to gold at a fixed rate of $35 per ounce, and it was guaranteed that any foreign bank could turn in $35 and receive a physical ounce of gold from Fort Knox. Then every other nation in this agreement pegged their individual currency to the US dollar, which was then used exclusively for trading commodities such as oil.
Hashtag where's the gold?
So exciting.
Hashtag investigate Fort Knox.
With one another. Normally, if a country spends more money than it takes in, their currency and spending power would devalue, which would cause domestic inflation. But now, the world would need to use US dollars to conduct any form of trade. And over time, the US started printing more and more dollars to import commodities like consumer goods and oil from other nations without having to worry about the US dollar losing value. Another advantageous side effect of this was a unique type of stagnation. While watching America go on a shopping spree, other nations realized that their US dollars would lose value just sitting in a vault somewhere, so their safest option at the time was to buy US treasury bonds. This created and inflated an extreme.
A secret cafe is called the Bohemian Grove. Yeah, it's such a secret that you know about it. Not a secret. The Bohemian Grove is not a secret. It's just where it's basically a country club where Republicans and Democrats can get together and do games.
Extraordinary global demand for U.S. government debt allowed it to borrow money for absurdly low interest rates to fund infrastructure and become the most powerful military industry of the world. By the late 1960s, the world started using confidence in the system. Economists like Milton Friedman and Triffin saw this as a flawed and dangerous economic rule set. One of the U.S. gold standard's sharpest critics was President frequently publicly condemned the system, calling it an exorbitant privilege. All part of U.S. economic law, the payment of trade massive amounts of U.S. dollars for American gold. Between 1960 and 1966, 24 submarines supervised by the French Navy and several flights across the Atlantic Ocean carrying back a total of 1,813 tons of gold from America.
They stole our gold, the goddamn French! Investigate Fort Knox!
We worth nearly half a trillion dollars today. After printing and spending incredibly reckless amounts of money on the American government knew that the jig was up. The wild conspiracy theory that the American dollar was scratched the parity with American gold was now a frequent public discussion by international leaders. Nobody knows how far off the parity gold and the US dollar was, but it wouldn't exactly be an explanation to think that if England or Japan or any other large nation decided to cash in their currency like France did, there'd be no more gold left to give them. So instead, on August 15th, 1971, President Nixon addressed the nation and told Americans that they would agree.
Speculators that are raging in all our war.
Does that sound similar to another grand design that America put forward in this era, ironically enough, that we now claim that we were the ultimate victims of? Interesting.
I have the right to protect the necessary to defend the dollar.
He ambiguously villainized and referred to West Germany and Japan as international speculators and accused them of pricing Bob money from America. He drew vague parallels between himself and Theodore B. Roosevelt, and he announced a new US dollar, the currency in which...
Elaborate, please. What the f do you think Donald Trump is saying and doing right now? That's literally what Trump is doing currently. The notion
How do you
that,
open a store?
The notion that America has been f***ed over is complete nonsense.
World trade almost exclusively took place would no longer be
Basic attached deal
anything
bonus, physical
tangible.
damage,
If
shield
you are
yourself.
among the
God, let's
overwhelming
get this one.
majority of Americans,
And
your dollar will be worth just as much tomorrow.
let's get
as
Demon
it is
Blade.
today.
Over the next few years, the inflation rate of the US dollar doubled, and the US and most of the Western world entered into a severe recession.
Can you set up auto upgrade paths still?
Countries tried to price oil against gold to create this made previous much worse. Oil prices quadrupled from $3 per barrel to $12 per barrel overnight, and by the end of the decade, crude oil prices skyrocketed by roughly 1,000%. As a result, gas stations could no longer afford to resupply their storage tanks. In many places, Americans spent days waiting to fill up their vehicles. In the north, many people reverted to heating their homes with wood-burning stoves, and in an effort to save fuel, Nixon ordered the maximum speed limit be set to 55 miles per hour nationwide. This led to truckers going on strike, and they started coordinating via 6 radios, inventing their own slang use lawnmowers. Many of those who were on strike spent their time slashing tires, shooting roads, and throwing cinder blocks from bridges on non-participating truck drivers. More than a few people were killed over these disputes.
He fucking me
and then
up!
Nixon had another one of his brilliant ideas. In 1973, he signed a bill extending daylight savings time to last the entire year. His violent programs rose to the highest level in American history. Children would walk to school in total darkness because there was not enough fuel for the school bus. Americans liked police But it would turn out that some people, like Treasury Secretary Simon, didn't believe it. He would take top secret trips to Saudi Arabia to negotiate another deal that would give the asymmetry of weapons. In 1974, the U.S. and Saudi Arabia quietly forged an alliance. It was not announced to the public or leaders, but was conducted as a highly calculated and secret operation. The Saudi Kingdom, who was by far the top oil producer in the world, agreed to price and sell every drop of its oil exclusively in the US. And because the entire world every nation on Earth was selling massive reserves of US dollars just to continue operating. But it gets far more calculated than that. The United States now had by far the most powerful military in the world, printing money at access to the previous gold standard. And the U.S. agreed to give the Saudi monarch an ironclad guarantee. The U.S. would provide cutting-edge military hardware, training, and an implicit promise that the American military would intervene and protect the Saudi royal family in the oil fields from anything. With one
There is one country that has overturned this ironclad guarantee.
threat. And in return, the Saudis agreed to recycle their assets directly into the U.S. billions upon billions of dollars in U.S. Treasury bonds. And in this same decade, between 1970 and 1980, Saudi Arabia's navy from $4 billion to $164 billion. That's like $15 an hour at McDonald's, and within the next decade.
Yes, Estonia. That's the country that America places the interest of.
I'm not
all
building
others.
stacks. I meant to say something else, but
They earned $615 an hour at McDonald's. The GDP per capita in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE eclipsed the earnings of even the wealthy class of people in America and Europe. If you ever watched footage showcasing insane tacky levels of wealth in Dubai, now you know where that wealth originated. But for the context of this video, this creation of what is now called the petrodollar put America back on their chariot race and leverage while the rest of the world would have to, cut down forests to mine materials and make shit to sell. If you're on the side of bringing manufacturing back to the U.S., this may be the most important argument I'll ever have to give you. The aforementioned insane amounts of privilege from the gold standard and petrodollar allowed America to outsource most of the things that we don't feel like doing. Mining, drilling, refining, working long hours in a factory. Instead of pilfering our natural resources and degrading citizens' quality of life, we instead adjusted our ties and thought of ideas.
Well, we low-key kind of still do that. We still do that. It's just more invisible, but we still do it nonetheless.
Try and conceptualize this. A small river with live on a farm. I don't grow plants to sell, and I literally give my chicken eggs away to friends and neighbors. And if I have a big surplus, I just throw them at a tree, and then the chickens eat them. Let's just use copper
level
production
20,
as an
not nice.
example, as it's pretty much available everywhere on Earth. And produce 6.8 tons of copper is extracted. 50 tickets remain. 5 tons. In Mexico, it's 1.76 tons. And here in America, we have vast, enormous copper deposits. 12 tons of copper processed per square mile. Instead, we import the majority of the copper in places so we can keep our land looking for it. So when I hear billionaires flocking out of manufacturing and mining jobs back to the U.S. and advocating for the removal of immigrants who are willing to do those jobs, I think to myself, did they somehow miss the last 8 years of economic prosperity? Is it possible that they don't understand how any of this works? Or is it entirely possible that they do understand how this works, and the problem is actually that too many Americans are too comfortable, and that probably sounds crazy, but stick with me, because first we need to build something to understand leverage.
The enemy has tickets remaining.
Maybe not for you. Aggression to predict a fight instead of just betting against Jake Paul and watching him get knocked out. Double skill. $100 in the process. So you decide to rent a home in a small town where every house costs exactly $100,000 and you're saving up to buy it. I decided to move to the same town as well, but not just to live there. I'm going to try and make as much money as possible. I happen to have $100,000
That wasn't
in
bad.
cash, so
Soul
I
is
buy
broken.
a house. A year goes by, property value increases by 10%, and I sell the same house for $110,000, making 10% profit on my equity. But then I get a better idea. I take $100,000 from the sale of my house and use it as 5 $20,000 down payments on 5 houses. Another year of 10% value increase will earn me 50% return on investment. So why don't I do this in real life? Why don't I own dozens of properties? Well, because this isn't some sort of infinite money glitch, it's a high-risk maneuver. In fact, it's asymmetrical against me, because if those properties would lose 20% of their value before I sell them, then I would lose 100% of my investment.
Well, good thing that is functionally illegal in the United States of America.
Investment and be broke. But there's a whole lot more to this. Long before George Soros was known for paying everybody in the world to be mean to Alex Jones and Donald Trump, he wrote a classic and important book called The Alchemy of Finance, which was published in 1987. This book introduced and popularized the theory of reflexivity, which is now arguably cited more in anthropology than it is in finance. Continuing with my pedantic little example here. As we all know, one of the few predictable things about housing markets is that they constantly fluctuate. And if I arrived to that town with millions or billions of dollars in capital to absorb the housing market losing value, I'd be able to tip the scales in a way where I'm not as exposed to the asymmetrical risk. If I buy enough of these houses in this little town, I'm actually not only contributing to the increase in the appraised property value, but I'm able to maneuver the local economy to my benefit. I could perform a little magic trick called the dividend recap. I could create a shadow company and then sell the houses to myself far below their actual value. Then when this causes comparable houses to be appraised at a lower value, I can buy them and rent them at higher prices until I create a housing shortage, which will then inflate the value for when I decide to sell them. By the way, none of this is hypothetical. This is exactly what Blackstone did via Invitation Homes after the 2008 financial crisis.
And Blackstone, for example, is now the largest owner of individual houses in the United States. And then we're renting them to people as opposed to selling them. It's a good business for us. It's a new thing, but it's also good for America. And it's good to be able to provide housing for those people
So nice. Thank you for providing housing.
Who need it.
In fact, they built a highly sophisticated algorithm to scan real estate markets and intentionally overpaid for houses to price out families who wanted to live in them. Over the years, plenty of white papers commissioned by private equity firms openly detail these theories. They describe housing as a supply-constrained asset with inelastic demand that can systematically block the working class from building generational wealth through homeownership. Instead, this guarantees that workers' income can be siphoned back into Wall Street equity. In 2026, this is now commonplace in nearly every industry. Nearly every price tag you see is partially hypothetical, obfuscating the objective value that the commodity holds. The consumer sees a product, service, company, or rental property. private equity sees a debt service. Let's visit another painful real-world example that you'll probably remember. In 2004, Toys R Us and Babies R Us were profitable and, due to the real estate holdings, considered stable with a B+ rating by Standard & Poor's. Their financial flexibility was rated as adequate, but due to big box stores like Walmart and Target, they needed to make some changes to remain that way. But then, KKR, Bain Capital, and Vornado Realty Trust smelled their favorite type of blood and took the company private. It didn't exactly take a clairvoyant to see that Amazon was going to be another big threat to Toys R Us, as they had just launched a dedicated toy warehouse, but Toys R Us had about $100 million per year to reinvest into growing an e-commerce platform that could compete against or integrate with Amazon. But instead, they used that money to leverage more debt. So much debt that nobody with a calculator could ever imagine them being able to carry it. So much debt, in fact, that the interest rates were 4 times higher than the $100 million they would otherwise be using to reinvest in growth. This massive pile of borrowed money would pay for over $470 million in management fees and dividend capitalizations, not revitalizing the business. That's because this private equity buyout was never about making Toys R Us more profitable or selling more toys. It was about using the company as a debt service. For a long 12 years, the store downsized. Employees were underpaid and eventually terminated. Buildings once associated with children's Christmas gifts, acting as anchor stores for entire malls, now rotted as they sat vacant. And it's worth noting that these same vampiric shitbags did the exact same thing to KB Toys, Gymboree, and Sports Authority. It's almost as if they have a fetish for suffocating our child retail nostalgia. The transition from a growth-based economy to an authoritarian one is difficult when your life is part of it, but this clears up when you zoom out over a period of years to examine the business models. It's a play that's not dissimilar to private equity's manipulation of the housing market, but instead of robbing your family of an opportunity to build generational wealth, it robs you of the opportunity to consume information freely. And of course, an incredible example of this would be AI. But I need to make an important disclaimer here. I'm not really big on anti-AI rants. AI is a broad term covering technology that has, for example, legitimately transformed medicine and healthcare research. It's also transformed how effectively insurance companies can deny claims for people who need life-saving treatment. And in a way, I'm not even talking about AI, but about the mechanisms.
Those are, by the way, on the polar opposites of like, those are on the polar opposites of like AI having to have, AI having to actually work versus AI deliberately not working. Like, this can't fail. This can't hallucinate. This, the expectation is that it fails because it's fine. It's fine for it to fail. The whole point of it is to make the wrong decisions so you can just point to the AI to be like, sorry, denial of your, there's a denial of your coverage. The AI said so.
It can deny claims for people who need life-saving treatment. And in a way, I'm not even talking about AI, but about the mechanism in which it's being used to exploit multiple industries and the world economy itself. Last September, NVIDIA announced a $100 billion investment into OpenAI, which is a little weird, as OpenAI, from their own optimistic projections, is on track to burn more cash than any company in history. But this starts to make a little more sense when you take into consideration that NVIDIA has monopolized the expensive hardware used in data centers, as OpenAI would be spending a whole lot of that investment buying NVIDIA GPUs. OpenAI spent investment on securing exclusive purchase agreements with top memory component suppliers like Samsung, cornering as much as 40% of global DRAM production capacity, which has now made it effectively impossible for consumers and small businesses to buy and build computers that can use it. And it's nearly impossible to even buy new high-speed drives to store large amounts of data. This has caused major problems in the video game industry, as even titans like Sony and Microsoft are considering console launches due to unreasonable production costs and limitations, which then gets even more absurd when you consider that Microsoft holds a 27% equity stake in OpenAI's for-profit arm valued at $135 billion. In that same month as NVIDIA's OpenAI deal, they paid $6.3 billion to purchase CoreWeave's unsold data center capacity through 2022, despite owning 7% of the company at the time and being their GPU supplier. Obviously, at this point, no visualization could possibly describe this thing. Just use it because it's funny. Simply calling this an AI bubble is far too forgiving. This is, in the opinion of many economists, unprecedented and rampant investment fraud. I'm sure this isn't news to anyone else, but Google has deprioritized its functionality as a search engine and replaced your experience with Gemini. I suppose to an extent.
Oh my god, no. It's so goddamn annoying. Oh my god, everything is getting shittier and shittier.
You're not gonna take my booty.
Optimistic user, this is an evolution of the search engine. Now, instead of having to correctly sort through important context, you are instead served an answer to your question, whether you desire this feature or not. Here's an example, and I literally just tested this on the first try. Yesterday, The Verge published a short interview with me where I was asked, what is your
auto level
online? So let's just skip the chore of reading an article and ask Google. It turns out that my happy place online is a VR game for MetaQuest called Walkabout Mini Golf, which is weird because I have no idea what the that is. This is because Gemini has confused me with Roger Lynn, the creator of the NPC drum machine. My actual answer to this question was a free music programming language called Strudel, and this information is literally in the metadata of the first link in the actual Google search. There are some differences between my actual life and my Gemini life. Gemini claims that I married some lady named Jackie in 2021. And approximately 7 years ago, I started bleaching my eyebrows platinum blonde to match my hair. Then I switched to shaving after being chemicals and dye. But I now really like having no eyebrows because it allows my eyes and lips to stand out more. This is all innocent music. In 2025, Hassan Piker was doing one of my videos on the stream, and someone in the chat speculated that my stance on Israel.
Stop. You guys are no. I don't want to believe it. Shut up. You're lying.
The following day, I had received a ton of messages expressing disappointment for me having made a video detailing my support for Israel after taking a trip there to interview IDF soldiers. The problem with this is, I've never been to Israel in my life. In fact, decades ago, when on tour in the region, I would intentionally avoid Israel due to the apartheid condition. And I've repeatedly been both a vocal and financial supporter of Palestinian state.
Thank God I didn't believe your bullshit, by the way, chatters. I did literally reach out to him, by the way, after that, and
for the length of my public presence.
I don't know if he'll mention it, but
Google's Gemini was, for some reason, mixing me up with the Newsmax reporter who I share virtually nothing in common with, and then prioritizing that absurd level of misinformation over the actual search results. Even after multiple news outlets covered and published Gemini's monumental fuck-up in detail, searching Ben Jordan Israel didn't bother identifying that Gemini itself caused this problem and claiming that I had addressed it over a year before it even happened. So right now you're probably thinking, why is this guy not literally suing Google right now? In the case of Ravi Starbuck, who Gemini had wrongfully claimed was a sexual predator, Google's defense in a request to dismiss his lawsuit called the case misleading because there was no evidence that anyone didn't know that they were hallucinations. They even went to the extent of accusing him of misusing the platform to create the AI hallucinations as evidence because they weren't technically documented or immediately reproducible. These are not rare glitches. These types of hallucinations happen a lot, almost the majority of the time. Last October, the BBC and European Broadcasting Union published a study that showed that 45% of AI news queries produced, and I quote, erroneous answers. This is an enormous problem and liability that breaks the very thing that these AI models are supposed to be doing. These companies are enormous multi-billion-dollar conglomerates with strategists and economists and massive legal teams. So why in the world would this profoundly and confidently unreliable technology not only be recklessly prioritized but forced on users of virtually every major technical platform? Because it's clearly intellectual property theft. The Verge...
Yeah, like, it's also manipulatable too. Not only does it hallucinate, but you can also manipulate it. One example is all of those AI written articles about my father's vast billion-dollar wealth. Okay? That is part of the reason why there's an unbelievable amount of fucking...
Okay, guys.
There's an unbelievable amount of misinformation that just flies around. And because there's so many dumb out there who trust this shit, because there's so many dumb out there who trust this shit, they literally think it's real. They're like, oh, he's only dead as a billionaire. Nobody, and I mean nobody, does the thing that I did with Ben Jordan, ironically enough, when I was like, I don't believe you, and then I searched it for myself, and then I did something even better than that. I reached out to him. Okay? If you don't do that, which many people don't do, right, you'll just believe a whole bunch of nonsense. Every right-wing YouTube who deliberately runs misinfo could be training an AI to hallucinate about you. Yeah. I mean, that's the old school nonsense. The old school nonsense was when people would just lie about your, your worldview, or lie about, your past, whatever, right? Nowadays, this is already mass serialized. There are people who are deliberately lying, but then there's also a shit ton of people who don't know the truth. who are just acting on that lie and adding on to it. And then, to make matters worse, the place that you are supposed to go to figure out whether this is a lie or not is also lying to you. I'm gonna look it up. Hassan Piker, father, billionaire. Oh, damn. Okay, Gemini's not lying. It says, no, Hassan Piker's father is not a billionaire. People don't realize how rich Hassan actually is. First thing that pops up. H3H3 Productions. People don't realize how rich Hassan's family actually are. His father is the vice president of a bunch of Turkey's biggest conglomerates. It's a $37 billion company, so it's insanely ironic when he wears an emo shirt that says make the rich pay when he himself is a 1%er, and that's putting it very mildly. Thank God the first thing that comes up when you Google
his life, though. I need to help
this is from my mass harassment subreddit. Just straight up lying. Hassan Piker's parents, backgrounds and key details. Times of India. Hassan Piker is lying about being dead broke. National Review. National Review. Mehmet Piker with a net asset value of $10.5 billion in 2024. DGG World. Nepo baby disowns millionaire father to prove. Do you see? We just went through the gamut. We went through literally people deliberately lying. Okay, we went through people deliberately lying. Sex Pestiny, DGG World. Okay, Ethan Klein, the National Review, a right-wing operation, of course. And then a bunch of AI articles from the Times of India. That's how it works.
Paid Terrence O'Brien to reach out to my manager and set up an interview, and then
yeah, all you have to do is make a blog Reddit post that makes a very specific statement, and with some SEO, that very specific statement, that very specific result will bubble to the top of the results and be parsed by Gemini, thus becoming true. Now, of course, what's ironic is, like, even if that fake information was real, I don't know what that changes about my worldview. My worldview is my own. Who gives a what my father's positions are on anything? You don't just, you know, there's no epigenetic memory. But that's beside
a short article to accompany it. News sites like The Verge also pay for errors and emissions insurance. And Terrence said that would damage my career. And they pay for this with subscriptions and ad revenue. Google said, we don't feel like paying that price for any of the other shit, but we do want that ad revenue. So we'll just have a bot scan the information in the article and prioritize our regurgitation of it ahead of the actual link. And if we make a completely insane mistake that no reporter would actually make, then we'll shrug and say, we didn't do it, it's AI. That's exactly what they do with image generators. Why take photos when you can make money from other people's photography? Why bother paying a musician royalties when you can just scan their music and sell regurgitated versions of it? Why license a book and a writer who can just regurgitate the text inside of it? And at the same time as this happens, the same government, Justice Department, that literally imprisons people for sharing music files, classifies critique of generative AI as anti-tech extremism in the most recent U.S. counterterrorism. When news organizations, software companies, record labels, or any type of IP-based business lose enough revenue to AI theft, then they'll have to lay off the workers who create the IP, and they'll be incentivized to innovate to their company and keep things going. And if all goes to plan, then across the board, your devices will fully use AI to summarize and organize articles written by or assisted by AI. And the data centers required for this transition, even after inflation adjustment, exceed the cost of building America's railroads and highways. According to Forbes, by 2030, the cost for this expansion will exceed $1.7 trillion. This is an amount of burned cash and investment unlike anything any economy has ever experienced. It's far more than the estimated cost of funding. It is then, on the other end of this transition, where we have access to more information about the infrastructure that you are required to chip in and pay the debts. It is then when tech will have done to intellectual property what private equity firms have done to Toys R Us. This isn't my wild theory. That's literally the pitch. These companies are openly scaling AI to 100% adoption. That's why the investment keeps coming and the largest bubble in history hasn't popped. Believe it or not, part of me supports and is even excited about this nuclear bomb going off. I have faith that Those fighting for the exploitation of intellectual property will make people increasingly consider the absurdity of treating ones and zeros as if they were a tangible commodity. Oh no, please don't jeopardize Spotify and major labels. They've been so good to us musicians. Oh my gosh, please don't force society to reinvent how news is shared. It's been working so well for democracy. Please don't encourage us to create a completely free and open decentralized internet. What the hell are we gonna do without this system you provided? Just stop playing your games and spend time with our loved ones? I'm getting increasingly worried that there is a much more sinister plan in place to deal with this liberating ideology, though. Stick with me. If Elon Musk and his entourage of private security pulled up my driveway right now and he rolled down his window and said, "Hey, I love your channel style. I'll give you $10 million to make a video about the dangers of transgender culture," I'd tell him to get the fuck off my property. This isn't some edgy precedent either. This same situation plays out with nearly every brand that emails this channel. I know what I want in life. And I know that I'll be happier not making a video I don't want to make than I would be with $10 million. But that's a privilege that I've worked extremely hard for. But like, what if something happened? What if I had a child that had cancer and couldn't afford the treatment? Or what if I was behind on my property taxes and was expecting the county to evict me any day now? Well, then my integrity might be more compromisable and I might swallow my pride and make propaganda or insincere content for my subscribers. A really fascinating and important study called Income and Emotional Well-Being, a Conflict Resolved, zeroes in on the root of this very thing. These researchers found that money and happiness are closely intertwined, but this usually flattens out between $60,000 and $90,000 a year. This also happens to be the average income where a person or family of comparable earners can turn their income into wealth. They can own a house, they could start a business, they could save for retirement. Of course, people in this range still have to work and they would still be affected by setbacks, but for the most part, they've escaped complete financial control. They can afford to take the risk of reporting sexual harassment, or they could start a union without the immediate threat of being homeless if they're illegally fired as a result. What's fascinating, though, is that those making $130,000 per year are generally just as happy as those making $80,000 per year. They don't need to be wealthy. They can live in a small suburban home and have to keep the AC off on a warm day to keep the power bill down. They can drive a mid-range vehicle and eat generic cereal, and they're just as happy as the people who don't have to make those compromises. It's almost as if economic happiness is defined solely by having just enough income to say "f you" when you're mistreated. Each little marble here represents $1 billion, and depending on how the SpaceX IPO goes, Elon Musk's net worth will land somewhere between $800 billion and $1 trillion, so let's just say $900 billion. And this is the total purchasing power of the city of Austin, Texas, and every person who lives there, $268 billion. This includes everybody's earnings, investments, business revenue, real estate, and so on. Now, if we were to draw a line representing the point in which Elon Musk's purchasing power dipped below the amount he needed to live a comfortable life, we would quite literally need to use a microscope on a single marble. But if we go by that study that I mentioned earlier versus Austin's GDP per capita, that line for the combined people in Austin is right here. If their purchasing power suddenly dropped below this level, the average family would not be able to accumulate wealth. Their life in Austin, Texas would be spent working from paycheck to paycheck, hoping for some sort of windfall or miracle to get them past the vicious cycle of debt. So this, combined with having enough purchasing power to eclipse a major city you live in, creates a completely different mechanism of wealth. Whether it's a company or an absurdly wealthy individual, when a single actor's purchasing power is comparable to entire communities, it is more valuable to them to remove billions of dollars from here than it is to add billions of dollars to here. All of a sudden, some of the confusing and chaotic things that are happening in the world start to make sense. Capitalism doesn't work without growth. That is in its core definition, whether it's the Industrial Revolution or agrarianism or a crack dealer. Here's a question that I've been screaming for years and have not once seen it asked on any debates or news channels. Why the f would so many capitalists support closed borders and contribute to political campaigns that lowered the population? Even if they were evil Mr. Burns-style capitalists, wouldn't they want underpaid Latin Americans mining steel and aluminum and then going home and buying more groceries and prescription drugs without insurance and renting their private equity-owned apartments? I really want to believe that so many conservatives and fake libertarian billionaires are so weirdly racist that it's...
I'm gonna ban you for 1 second for asking, can we pin the video when the video is already pinned?
somehow conflicts with and defeats every capitalist principle that define their entire lives. I want to believe that Trump and Elon and Peter Thiel and Bill Ackman are stupid and the ruling class is somehow exclusively filled with morons who failed upwards over and over and over again. I want to believe it because it awards me a lot of social credit to do so. I want to believe it because it allows me to roll my eyes at the last 2 decades. I want to believe that in 20 years we'll point to this page in our history books as the stupid wild ride that we can't believe actually happened. But I don't actually believe that because it makes way more sense that they're using xenophobia as a scapegoat to create a labor and supply shortage that forces the middle class to pay twice as much for products using these materials. I want to believe that things will go back to normal at some point, but I don't think that they will. Consider that 4 out of 5 of the wealthiest people in the world attended the presidential inauguration, and the 5th, Larry Ellison, was in the White House the following day. Or consider that the wealthiest person in history spent nearly $300 million on the presidential election, illegally paying between $47 and $100 to people who promised to register to vote in swing states. He then selected right-wing registered voters at random and awarded them with $1 million checks. Then the wealthiest person in history, equipped with 0 minutes of government managerial experience,
perhaps you've heard of it. Perhaps.
Was given his own government department that fired hundreds of thousands of government employees, terminated 15,000 grants, and gutted the Department of Human Services. The administration then terminated the food stamp benefits of 4.3 million Americans and expanded work requirements to people over 55 years of age. And all of the money we saved from this is eclipsed by the amount of our tax dollars that were spent on ICE, Border Patrol, and a rapid expansion of mass government surveillance. In fact, just from the first 3 months of our involvement in the Iran conflict, the economic impact on the American economy is actually higher than what the entire country pays for food assistance programs for the entire year. So most people's retirement savings and 401ks are in things like passive index funds and ETFs. And passive index funds are traditionally safe, conservative investments for people who like dying on a mattress more than they like gambling. They're very mainstream and diversified, and they don't rely on an investment manager to make decisions. Instead, they rely on benchmarks. In fact, they're legally required to buy mainstream stocks listed on the NASDAQ 100 to diversify investments and reduce human error. So the NASDAQ 100, or NDX, has historically had a strict index methodology to try and prevent fraud. So for example, if you had a startup and you wanted to bring it public and have it listed on the NASDAQ 100, you would have to go through a mandatory 3-month seasoning period so your stock could shake out early speculators and get closer to its actual value on the market. And if you're like most people and you don't know how the ins and outs of how an initial public offering or IPO works, let's just dig into that for 1 second for some context. So before a company launches an IPO on an index like the NASDAQ, they have an underwriter, which is usually a large investment bank like Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley. IPOs tend to be a bit volatile and chaotic, and so if that stock launches and things aren't going so well, an underwriter will buy shares at a higher value to create an artificial floor to keep it from crashing. Doing this is really risky, and propping up a company's entire public market cap for a period of 3 months or more could be extremely detrimental to the underwriter. Well, with the SpaceX IPO launching at an unheard of $2 trillion valuation, last month, the NASDAQ 100 changed this 3-month safety period to 15 days. This means, literally, that on July 6th, 2026, your passive index funds will be contractually required to start spending your savings on buying up massive blocks of SpaceX stock to track the index. And then, when your 401k is forced to buy up this brand new stock that may be artificially propped up by underwriters, the siphoning of your life savings may commence. So how's that for a real-world example of leverage being used to rob you blind? In 2020, the average monthly rent in the United States was $1,185. Now it's $1,700. The consumer price index for groceries was $254 in 2020, even during the massive supply chain shortage at the time. Now it's $320. In 2020, Americans paid an average of 13 cents per kilowatt hour for electricity. Now we're paying 20 cents. If your 401k had $100,000 in a safe, stable, bond-oriented investment plan in 2020, you may have seen a whopping 25% gain. But after inflation, your spending power right now is $96,830, and that's before taxes. The point is, if you're judging wealth by purchasing power, then you're likely working harder and earning more while getting poorer. Every single time you look at the news, when you come across yet another story that perplexes you or makes you wonder how the most powerful people in the world could consistently make such terrible decisions, it's worth asking yourself, will this directly or indirectly contribute to me working my entire life only to be left with just enough money to die on a mattress? Because for those of my viewers who are lucky enough to have accumulated some form of wealth, even if it's your 401k or a house that you're still paying off, once you see this pattern, you can't stop noticing that the majority of policies or change that's been made by the government in the last decade create a new pathway to siphon that wealth from you. The paranoid conspiracy theory that I cannot get out of my head is that this isn't happening to steal your money. It's happening to steal your autonomy. When you combine all of this with the enormous amount
it's literally... Okay, it's not even a joke. He identified finance capitalism from first principles. It's like a Michael Hudson book. Wait till you hear his conclusion. Oh no.
Tax dollars paying for unprecedented levels of government surveillance. How much more will it take to make you too vulnerable to fight back when you're mistreated? How much more will it take to make you feel like your family's survival is at risk when you attend a protest? At what point will you feel weary to attend a city hall meeting to voice opposition to a proposed data center? Or to make you scared to tell a joke about the president? Or even comment on videos like this one or share it on your social media? How far are we right now from the point in time when you will feel like you can't afford the risk or potential punishment for voting to replace your elected leaders? I once read a book that I expected to be really corny, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. It was written by Bronnie Ware, who was a hospice nurse who spent years talking to people at the end of their lives. The most common regret from people who knew that their lives were about to end and they were about to leave this world. I wish I'd had the courage to live a life.
I thought the answer was grind harder. Tip my landlord bigger sums of money. Increase shareholder value further.
True to myself, not the life others expected of me. To put it more bluntly, when you are at your wisest, equipped with the most memories and the most context, looking back at every single thing that you've experienced in your entire life, you will not give a about a single statistic in this video, and what you will regret is spending a single second of your life concerning yourself with it. Circling back to where this started, the things I've mentioned in this video make me miss the capitalism I grew up with, but contrary to that, they highlight the core problem that is seemingly always coupled with capitalism itself. And that's existing or being forced to exist in a constant state where you are valuing yourself by your earnings and belongings, and doing so in a way that is unfairly asymmetrical. There's simply no denying that capitalism creates a world where a deadbeat dad with a trust fund is respected more than a single parent who works 2 low-wage jobs to provide for their family. If we're to think about it logistically, the asset that everybody should be hoarding and protecting the most is time. And I don't mean this in the time is money sense. Maybe it's something that happens in your 40s, but if I order something and it requires 4 hours of my life to assemble it, I'm just sending it back. Like, sure, this cabinet looks really nice and it's worth the $250 that I paid for it, but I want to play guitar or look at stuff under the microscope for 4 hours more than I want a nice looking cabinet. And then you just realize that it's all ironically coming back full circle. Like 30 years ago, if my grandfather ordered a new coffee table and a little thin, heavy box showed up with a 22-page assembly manual, he would absolutely lose his shit. That kind of thing would be absolutely unacceptable to consumers in the 1980s. In fact, it would be seen as such an egregious scam that it would be on the evening news. This time theft isn't just some annoyance that old men bitch about in their yards. In economics and sociology, its clinical name is shadow work. It describes the uncompensated and unpaid labor that the ruling class have quietly outsourced to the consumer under the guise of convenience or innovation. In a classic market, you've exchanged money so somebody else could spend their time processing a service for you. The post-capitalist mechanism works by charging you the full price and forcing you to act as an unpaid employee. Also, at some point we have to admit that this is our own fault. We drove to IKEA and picked out the bedroom set and then searched the warehouse for the parcel number and then lifted the boxes and rented the truck to transport them and then assembled the furniture in our own homes with our own tools. Instead of laughing at the very proposal of being expected to do all these things on our own free time without compensation, we felt like it could save us a few bucks. And we were greedy about the wrong thing. We were greedy about the thing that wildly changes value without our control, the thing that is controlled by people who don't care about us, but who repeatedly, throughout history, time and time again, break our social contracts with them. Perhaps the thing that Franklin D. Roosevelt didn't account for nor could have predicted when he drew a map to make capitalism work for everybody was this inevitable phenomenon. Whether you're working 3 jobs at the same time just to keep the lights on, or literally the wealthiest person in the history of civilization, it seems like capitalism's flaw is a very abstract one. It robs us of the ability to prioritize the appreciation of living. Let me tell you about this video's sponsor.
Okay, that was I mean, fine, good message at the end, sure. I mean, this is a very good video. This is a very good video. Also, there's no sponsor, it's a bit.
Wouldn't this be like the most amazing time to do an ad read for an app-based high-interest savings account or some bullshit? Unfortunately, making videos like this tends to cost a lot of money, and traditionally getting money requires one to spend time doing things that they don't want to do, and while I do have to do that from time to time, in this case, I don't have to do that because fortunately, this video is sponsored by you, my viewers. I'm a one-man band in videos like this, but this channel not only produces YouTube videos, but this year I'm actively getting involved in using my knowledge and resources to help political campaigns that are willing to push back against things like mass surveillance and the rapid expansion of data centers. And we're off to a great start, and I think it's making a big difference in how these things will play out. So if you want to chip in and be involved in this, or if you want to join a healthy Discord community, or if you just want to play with my field recordings, audio assets, and plugins I make in my spare time, then my Patreon is for you, and you can join for as little as $1. Thanks for listening to my economic manifesto. And as always, whatever you do, keep creating. Bye.
So is he saying that capitalists on paper should want a bigger population and more people to exploit, but you do not need that when you can just invade Venezuela and steal billions of barrels of oil? Did Philip DeFranco go to the beach that makes you old? That's your crazy. God. Funded by viewers sounds interesting. Would you ever do that? Good one. Yes, I would. I would do that. What's your feedback to the video? Sounds like you're a smidge critical. I actually don't have any criticisms of it. And the reason why I say that is because, like, the only criticism, I guess, is that it's technically it's technically an analysis that you know, an analysis that is something Marxists are very familiar with. He didn't give much solutions. I mean, that doesn't matter. He's not. He's identifying what it is. But Stop Reaction is one of the best ones in the reaction.
Medusa.
I have a worshiper boost. Nice. Kukulkan. I'm going against Chalk, Bacchus, and Ra.
I'll make everyone feel my pain.
Oh my God. Okay, listen. Oh, dude. Stab in the back. Really is. Remember those words. I think his implication is it's blackmail, by the way. I think that's the narrative through line. Israel, Epstein files, blackmail, which, by the way, you know, it's not that crazy of a theory, I'll admit. Like, I don't think it's that crazy of a theory at all. Anyway, let's get to Tucker Carlson.
You spend the day with Trump.
Tucker Carlson did an hour and 51 minutes with the New York Times, and there's some gems in here.
Trump, and sort of like you're in this kind of dreamland. It's like smoking hash or something. It's interesting. Very interesting.
I'm Lulu Garcia Navarro, and I'm in Maine to interview Tucker Carlson. For many years, Carlson was one of President Trump's most vocal supporters.
I mean, I've always agreed with Trump's policies. Always.
This game looks beautiful.
And here I am with a full-throat, utterly sincere endorsement of Donald Trump.
But recently, Carlson has publicly broken with Trump. He's not only come out against Trump's decision to go to war with Iran.
This is the single most foolish thing any American president has ever done.
He now says he regrets supporting the president.
He will be tormented by it for a long time. I will.
And has has become a vocal and influential critic of the administration.
This whole thing is like dooming anyone connected to it.
A man who can read the room.
For the foreseeable future, including the entire Republican Party.
This puts Carlson at the center of a major battle on the right, over Israel, over foreign interventions, and over the post-Trump world itself. Here's my interview with Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson.
Thanks for having me.
Why does Cenk like Tucker so much? Same reason why every Bangladeshi unk loves him. I swear to God, I think I know what the turning point is. Tucker Carlson defended Muslims. That's what it took. And my aunt turned to a Bangladeshi aunt on a WhatsApp chat. When it goes a long way, chatters, I'm telling you. And Cenk is like not like a Muslim monk at all, right? He's like American through and through. But when you got a white boy, I mean, just country white, okay? We're talking, well, not country club white, right? Tucker Carlson is the definition of a wasp in the dictionary. When you got a guy like that, especially a guy who is not only like critical of Israel, but also defensive of Islamophobia, a guy who has been a prominent leader in the right-wing movement, come out and defend Islam and defend Muslims, it's over. That played a big role, I think, in my unc's assessment. And Cenk is not even like remotely Muslim. I mean, he's Mr. Atheist, right? He's like a little bit of an edgy Reddit atheist almost, even though he has duked it out with Sam Harris for years over the Islamophobia stuff. So it's obviously important to him, right? This is like an issue. It's understandable. It's an issue that pertains to social justice. And from his perspective, Tucker Carlson coming out and like attacking Islamophobia, saying that like Israel is fomenting Islamophobia, that was huge, I think.
Me.
Very excited for you to be here. In Maine, we should say. Any excuse to come to Maine is always a good reason.
Most people don't come to part of Maine, so I'm
It's all parts of Maine are good parts. I wanted to sit down with you for a number of reasons. You've been at the center of conservative media, obviously, for a very long time. By extension, it's politics. And I want to get your perspective on this moment, on your evolution, your worldview. You recently made quite a dramatic break with President Trump over the war in Iran, and so I'd love to hear about that.
No!
I want to start, though, in the lead up to the conflict.
I'm running my hands off. He got fucked up.
You said that you spoke to the president several times about the plan to attack Iran before it actually happened on February 28th. I'd love to hear a little bit about that. Was it just you and the president in those meetings? Can you just give me a sense of what was going on there?
Well, I've been speaking to him about since 2016, maybe 15, because there was enormous pressure on me, so there has been on many presidents to regime change Iran. And we know, based on our experience with a much smaller country, Iraq, that, that's a tall order, and it doesn't necessarily lead to a place you want to go, and it's not good for the United States. So anyway, and Trump knew that, and that was one of the main reasons, actually, that I supported him during, my time at Fox News and campaigned for him. And so it was really central to my views of Trump's candidacy and presidency. And so when it became clear in June that we were starting down this road toward a regime change war with Iran, I was just, I was baffled. I was very upset, not because I have allegiance to Iran, but because I thought it would be terrible for the States, as it has been. I imagined, but I could see exactly where this was going, and he was under enormous pressure to do it, once again, as all presidents in my lifetime have been. So we talked a lot in June. He embarked on this effort to take out Iran's nuclear program, which was really just the opening salvo in a regime change effort. He knew that. I told him that. Charlie Kirk told him that. We did it. We got out. And then it became clear this winter, in January, that we were moving toward this thing that we're in now. Absolutely clear.
Did he explain to you why he wanted to take the country into war? I mean, I'm just trying to understand the dynamics of that conversation. What was he?
I watched him 3 times before, 5 weeks, 6 weeks before, and met with him in the Oval Office alone, and people filing in and out. With the White House chief of staff.
Honestly, they keep going for buffs. We don't have to go for the. If they want the gold fury, let them take it.
On this topic,
Your
and
feet.
he would begin almost every conversation with.
We don't need it right
Which is sort of opposed to the weapons that I want. Nuclear weapons. I want Israel to have a nuclear weapon. I don't want any nuclear weapon. Doesn't seem like a good thing. But that's not the question. The question is, what do you do about it? And that was kind of the end of the rationale for doing this. He never seemed enthusiastic about it, ever. And I would say, well, here are the potential effects of this. Obviously, the geography of Iran being the most important fact of Iran. Iran is not a military power, it's an economic power. That was obvious because it controls the greatest span of coastline along the Persian Gulf, which is the source of a fifth of the world's energy, etc. All well known now. And well known to him then. And he, I think, the consequences. But
why was he taking your calls then? Because if he knew your position and he understood the perils, I mean, was he trying to convince you to back the war?
No. He made no effort to convince me at all, other than to say it's going to be all right. Everything's going to be okay. And I just didn't feel that way. None of this, I should say, was about Trump or my relationship with Trump or my feelings about Trump.
I don't trust Tucker at all, but I think this stuff is very believable. Him having numerous conversations with Trump around Iran, I totally believe it. And especially Donald Trump turning around and going, nah, everything's going to be all right. That has been reported on, okay? That has been reported on extensively, and I 100% believe that conversation took place like that. Exactly like that, where he was like, nah, it'll be fine. That is literally Trump's modus operandi. That's his MO. He just goes, oh, you think this is going to be a cataclysmic sequence of events that will destabilize the entire planet? No! It'll be fine! I don't understand why he cares about Iran. 2 reasons. 1, at this point, I think Tucker Carlson is somewhat of a Pat Buchanan-style isolation, right? Which is ironic, because for many, many years he shit on Pat Buchanan. Now, do I believe that Tucker Carlson's main reason for supporting Trump's political rise was his impression of his opposition to the war in Iraq and a new war with Iran? No.
How many times? He's died 7 times. Yeah, you're feeding.
I don't believe that. He's lying about that. He's a grifter. That is retconning of history. However, I do believe that he was telling Trump not to wage war with Iran because anyone with like 3.5 brain cells could see exactly how the situation was going to unfold. We knew it, and I don't think I'm necessarily smart. I don't think I'm a particularly intelligent person.
I
think I have just common sense, right?
Ability locations.
So
I need to reroute
Tucker Carlson
them.
most likely understood that waging war at with Iran at the behest of Israel would be unbelievably bad for America's geopolitical power posture. America's like political future, America's capabilities of force projection. It would play a role in the death of American empire. Tucker Carlson loves the
Oh shit! His hair color or anything like that. I just didn't want the United States.
Never mind.
And my strong feeling by the end of those conversations, which was the last one was probably a week before it began, the war began, was that he felt he had no choice. And that he was resigned to it. He was unhappy about it. He didn't seem enthusiastic at all. There's no effort to say, once we do this, the United States will be at peace, we'll be safe, we'll be more prosperous. There was none of that.
I mean, you speak to many people in the administration, and I'm just trying to understand the fault lines over this. I mean, who was for the war? Who was against it while all this was being discussed?
I mean, I'm guessing to a certain extent. I do talk to a lot of people there still, but I don't work there, so I don't. Sure. You know, it's hard to really know. You know, there are people with a long record of making bellicose noises about Iran. They still work there. So, specifically the Secretary of State / National Security Advisor said for many years Iran is the greatest threat we face, just a ludicrous statement, but has said that's absolutely correct. But that said, I didn't hear a single time from anyone, including from the Secretary of State himself, who I spoke to about this, any enthusiasm for doing this. My strong impression, and I could be wrong because I don't work there, is that no one in the building was pushing for this, at least overtly, that all the pressure was coming from outside. Constant calls from donors and people with influence over the president, well-known Rupert Murdoch, Mary Mandelson, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then a small constellation of, I guess they become influencers, beginning with Mark Levin, but there were others pushing the president to do this and telling him that you will be a figure out of history, you will save and redeem Israel or something. I think that's the case they were making. And I didn't hear of anybody making the case that this would be good for the United States. I don't think that was ever a conversation.
There's been a lot of speculation about the president's mindset during this period.
Yes.
And part of it is, of course, about what happened after Venezuela was successful, in their view, operation removing Maduro from office, and that he felt sort of emboldened by that, you know, the success of that operation, and that he felt that this was going to be similar, that he underestimated the Iranians and what they might do in response to an attack.
Yeah, I don't believe that. I think the Venezuela operation allowed him to retreat into a kind of fantasy in which he told himself this is going to be easy, but I don't think that. And I should say, having spoken to him why, in this calendar year, I detected all of dementia, mental decline. You hear people say, well, he's gone soft. Like, that was not my impression at all. Trump is not well informed on a lot of topics, for sure. He's proudly ignorant on a lot of topics, but he has kind of remarkable powers of insight into people and power dynamics. Like, you don't get to be president by accident. The guy's smart in the ways that matter politically, and my strong read was that he was doing this against his will.
Executioner,
famously, the head of the Counterterrorism Center, one of the top intel officials in the country, Joe Kent, resigned shortly after the war began and said,
"Oh my God, okay, listen, oh, dude, stabbed in the back, okay? Remember those words. Okay, I have in the past been critical of people, criticizing me for saying like, oh, Tucker Carlson says Trump is a slave to Israel. This is him working through the steps of regenerating a stabbed in the back.
Also, you need to be able to just change your controls for each god. That would feel so good if I could do that.
That unfortunately made the mistake of listening to the Jews. Okay? One hundo P. For those of you who don't know, stabbed in the back is a myth from an anti-Semitic conceptualization from Nazi Germany era, the Nazi Germany era. The idea that like Jews stabbed Germany in the back, and therefore they must be punished. Okay? What he is doing right here, because look, I also think Israel urged and goaded and maybe even duped Trump into taking action in Iran. So I guess by some estimation, and I think my analysis is factoring in simply the truth, right? There is a little bit of an alignment in what Tucker and I are seeing, but if you actually scratch the surface, you realize that Tucker's sentiment here is to preserve the integrity and the myth of American imperialism being a force of good. Okay? I don't have that assessment. I don't believe that American imperialism and American power is a force of good. Tucker does. So what he's basically tried to design here is the notion that Israel, the Jewish state, okay, he will never say it was the Jews that did it until it's like permissible to openly say that, right? Like until, you know, there is no stigma whatsoever associated with that. That's what I mean when I say openly say that. But his assessment is most likely that, right? But he won't say it. But it's very clear that Tucker Carlson is trying to create this idea that not only in Iran, but also in Iraq as well, if you listen closely to what he says, that Israel was the one that manipulated the American administrations, both in the past and currently, into taking actions that they did not want to take. The idea that Donald Trump reluctantly waged war with Iran is wrong. It's just wrong. He was not reluctant to wage war with Iran. The most charitable interpretation of the actual events that took place is that Donald Trump thought foolishly that it would be similar to the Venezuela operation. But he was enthusiastic about waging war with Iran.
It's so close.
I will never believe the idea that like Donald Trump was forced, his hand was forced into waging war with Iran. He really didn't want to do it. Same with Iraq. Americans just did not want to wage war with Iraq at all, but Israel, you know, got America somehow to go and wage war with Iraq. Did Israel play a role in Iraq? Absolutely. It's obvious. They did. Benjamin Netanyahu came and delivered a very famous speech to Congress. Israel was very enthusiastic, no matter how the pro-Israeli side tries to make it seem like you know, Israel was not on board. American Jews were not on board, obviously, with the war in Iraq, as they are not on board with the war in Iran either, because they're American Jews. They're American, okay? They're American first. They're just Jews who happen to live in America. The idea that they are unbelievably loyal and only care about Israel is definitely presented by a lot of Jewish institutions, but you look at the polling, you realize that that's not necessarily the truth, right? Having said that, I don't make the same distinction for Iran, and you might say, why? Because with Iran, there is definitely a divergence in interests. Okay, has America always wanted to blow up Iran? Certainly. For 47 years. But no president has ever done so. Donald Trump, on the other hand, has been unbelievably servile and unbelievably loyal to the interests of Israel, unlike any other president, with maybe the exception of Joe Biden. Okay? With Iraq, that was events set in motion far before Benjamin Netanyahu came and delivered a speech in front of Congress. But like I'm repeating over and over again, this is important to understand. And this is something that I've been very critical of, like the Nick Fuentes of the world on as well. Their ideas, their worldview revolves around this false notion that American imperialism specifically, is a force for good. It tames the wild beasts of the world. And America can only do wrong if it's actually goaded into or forced through blackmail, hypnosis, whatever you want to call it. Only when American leadership is forced into taking these actions, and even when the leadership takes those actions, they're actually reluctantly taking those actions. That's what Tucker Carlson is saying here. It's a way to preserve the integrity of America. It's a very nationalistic mythos.
Exactly the same.
That's the major distinction between my analysis of the situation and someone like Tucker Carlson's.
I think this decision is connected to a series of seemingly disconnected events, all of which revolve around violence, and we need to find out more about how this happened. And he was, of course, dismissed and threatened with an F.
Yes, it's a weird way to absolve America's crimes and the centrality of blame and put it back on Israel instead of both countries. And that is the reason why this is a very appealing sentiment for many Americans who already have that American exceptionalist attitude regardless. That's what's so terrifying about this prospect, and that's precisely the reason why, for two reasons. One, it's much easier to blame the Jews than to blame ourselves. Okay? That's number one. Number two, when you do blame Israel, you actually lean into the idea that America is an exceptional country, and America is not a violent country, or if America is violent, it's actually doing that violence as a necessary form of violence, and sometimes it can appear as cruel, but you simply don't understand it. That cruelty is unfortunately necessary because our enemies are far crueler than we ever could be. So those two factors make Tucker Carlson's rhetoric infinitely more appealing than my rhetoric, because you can turn around and say, Hassan hates America. His name is Hassan. He's Muslim. He's an Islamist fundamentalist. He's a jihadist. He's an Islamo-communist. All this stuff. He's so critical of America. He hates America. He says America is bad. America bad. That's all he says. Liberals align with that unbelievably reactionary belief system as well. It's not just Republicans who 100% agree with that assessment. There are plenty of liberals who agree with it too, because American exceptionalism is bipartisan. And that's precisely the reason why this kind of nefarious propagandizing is, in my opinion, from the perspective of many Americans, much easier to understand. We lay the blame entirely in the hands of Israel. And in the interim, in the short term, this might be a successful way to decouple from Israel, and maybe some people are making that dangerous calculation. But in the long term, this will not solve the problems at all. After all, if it wasn't Israel, but if it was just America directly slaughtering kids in Gaza, would that be appropriate? Because the reality of the matter is, Israel is a vestige of empire, and therefore, when Israel is slaughtering children in Gaza, we are slaughtering children in Gaza.
FBI investigation, and no one kind of followed up on that. And again, I don't know the answer, but this was not a normal decision-making process, and my strong impression was that Trump was more a hostage than a sovereign decision-maker in this.
Well, so tell me what you're getting at when you say the President of the United States, the most...
You should stop punching to the left. Oh, you mean to Tucker Carlson? Dude, I'm sorry. I have a policy of usually not punching left, but it's so funny that like everyone that is even fractionally to my left has been utilizing this unbelievably right-wing Nazi-backed media cycle to attack me viciously every single day. And the one time I respond, I'm like, oh, I'm such a bully. I'm punching left. It's so up. Like, really? You know, I've kept quiet on purpose because I do have a policy of not punching left. But at some point, I have to force people to rein it in a little bit. Unless you were making a joke about Tucker Carlson being to my left, in which case I apologize. I autistically didn't understand your joke.
Powerful country in the world had no choice.
I don't know what I'm getting at. I'm just telling you what I observed. He seemed, and that's kind of the question. And what I'm really fascinated by is the lack of curiosity on display into how exactly this happened. What are the mechanisms by which a guy who's supposedly sovereign, in charge, granted this authority by voters, tens of millions of them, can't make a decision in the country's interest or even in his own interest? He knew, and I know he knew because I talked to him about it directly, that the consequences, potential consequences, were profound and profoundly bad. The end of his presidency, to start, which I think it has proven to be, he knew that. And he wasn't... this is my read, and I could be completely wrong. I don't know what's in his head, and I don't want to overstate my knowledge at all, but this is my strong perception on the basis of many conversations on this topic. He felt he had no choice, and he said to me, everything's going to be okay. Because I was getting overwrought. Don't do this. The people pushing you to do this hate you. They're your
We meet
enemies.
again,
This will destroy
Will you
you.
win the
This
victory
will
here in
bravely
conquest
conquer
as
country.
well?
We've got kids. I'm hoping for grandkids. Let's not go there. And he said, it's going to be all right. And he said, do you know how I know that? I said, he said, because it always is. And I think there's a kind of, Teddy Rooseveltian optimism there, but that's not.
Not getting right off the bat, the jokes and trolling coming from a chat of thousands of people is not autism, by the way. Okay, well, sometimes it is.
Really what it was, and this is my read, that was more a kind of justification from a man who feels he has no choice. And that is my strong view. And not just my strong view, the view of others who were around him and involved in this deliberation to the extent it was a deliberation, which is not much.
Who are the other people around him who had that view?
You know, I can't speak for the views of others, but I will just say once again.
Oh, wait.
He's gonna say J.D. Vance because this entire
does the game know me already? Like, is this data from Smite 1? Because I do play mostly carry mid support.
Movement.
I like jungle, but I haven't played jungle since.
So we can lend that credibility
Season 2 was
either to the
Smite
likes
1.
of J.D. Vance, or maybe even for himself, or potentially Marco Rubio. I think he's playing his cards close to the chest right now. Okay.
Let me go
either gonna
to
be
practice
Marco
mode real
Rubio,
quick.
J.D. Vance, or maybe even Tucker himself.
That I never saw, nor did I hear about anybody who works for the Trump administration, anybody who was enthusiastically pushing this war on Trump, going in and being like, you know what, you want to be a truly great, you want to make this country great again, we need a regime change effort in Iran. And instead, you know, there were a lot of cowardly people, as there always are, and Trump engenders cowardice in the people around him through intimidation. And there is a kind of quality that he has that's spellbinding, and I think it probably literally is a spell. And the effect is to weaken people around him and make them more compliant and more confused. And I've experienced this myself. You spend a day with Trump, and you're sort of like, you're in this kind of dreamland. It's like smoking hash or something. It's interesting. Very interesting.
Nemesis.
And there may be a supernatural component to it. I'm not a theologian, but it's real, and anyone who's been around him can tell you it's real. But whatever the cause, no one around him was weighing in strongly, as far as I know, on either side, for or against.
Is out of
but
balance.
people from the
I will
outside
restore
were
it.
strongly weighing in, calling him constantly.
I'm going to give an alternative view on what may have happened.
Yes.
Which is.
And you may be right, by the way, because I don't want to overstate what I know.
Sure. I just want to due diligence. We've seen the president in his second term be much more interested in foreign policy, as many presidents are, much more open to taking action, not only in Venezuela, talking about Cuba, wanting the Nobel Peace Prize, weighing into situations in which he wasn't terribly interested in his first term.
For sure.
And so
that's real.
Could that not be part of this?
It's a huge part of it. And there's no question about that. And all presidents decide at some point that they're not interested in running the United States because it's hard. And how do you fix Baltimore and Gary, Indiana? And what do you do about homelessness in Los Angeles? Like, these are hard questions. We can't even make Head Start work. Despite, many billions and a lot of sort of well-meaning.
How about you shut your mouth on stuff you know nothing about and leave it up to experts like a local defense contractor? True. The mom and pop local defense contractors. I apologize to official Lockheed Martin, their official account in the chat. Clearly I was wrong.
People working, spending their lives on it, can't make it work. So these are hard problems, and I think it's universal. It's a universal experience among American presidents, but also among U.S. senators to decide, like, I'd rather run the world because the details are opaque. I don't speak these languages. I can seem, well, first of all, it's a display of male power. Send the bombs in, kill the bad people. But moreover, you get to feel like I did something, and that's important, and I get it. And this is, again, as you wisely note, a process that all presidents tend to go through. And so Venezuela, Cuba, I object to both of those efforts very strongly, but neither one, in my view, risks the future of the United States in the way that the Iran war now does. And so it's a big deal. But because it is, by the way, a contiguous neighbor of Iraq, and because Trump spent years talking about what a terrible idea the Iraq invasion was, in fact, defined his candidacy in 2016 on...
Yeah, that doesn't mean anything, man. Like, what the... Oh my God, how could Trump do this after he said so much about how dangerous the Iraq invasion was? Clearly something changed dramatically. I don't know. It's not like Donald Trump was actually a peaceful dove. Wow, he lied. Wow, I can't believe Donald Trump lied. What else? I wonder what else he must have lied about. What else did he lie about? For example, he said he was going to drain the swamp. The DC swamp has been swampier than ever since Donald Trump got his money molestation paws on it. especially in the second term. I mean, he even lied about locking Hillary Clinton up, which was an unfathomable L. It could have been the one upside. There's like little baby upside, and Hillary Clinton still roams free. You know what I'm saying? It's like, yeah, Russia, Ukraine fixed by day one. He just lies about everything. It's easier to find what he's saying. It's easier to find something that he said that is like a truthful
and a lie
than it is to calculate all the lies.
Calculate all.
New Trump truth.
It's easier to find what he's actually promised or what he's actually delivered on than it is to find all the lies. It's so many lies to sift through with this fucking president.
And the world over the last 47 years. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Donald J. Trump, President Donald J. Trump.
At that point, it's hard for me to believe that he just sort of organically reached this place at the end of February. He's like, oh, I think it's a good idea. He did not think it was a good idea. Shutting down a fifth of the world's oil and gas? Of all people, Trump knows that's bad.
You said he's a hostage just now. You told the BBC he's a slave to foreign interests.
Correct.
So I just want to ask you to be sort of explicit. I mean, Trump is being held hostage by whom? Or by who,
Benjamin
or by
Netanyahu and by his many advocates in the United States. And we know that not simply because Trump started the war on February 28th, but because he couldn't get out.
See, then it's the Modern Bailey. Like, now he's going to, when asked a direct question, he's going to go back to like very reasonable criticism, right? Like his starting point was like, Trump is very clearly reluctant. The real question here isn't just to ask him like, who's doing this? Okay. The real question isn't who's doing this, because everyone knows who's doing it. It's correct. Tucker Carlson is saying something true. The Foundation for Defending Democracy is literally an Israeli cutout in Washington, D.C. Okay? The administration just yesterday posted a Foundation for Defending Democracy graph. Like, they are not hiding it. They've copied and pasted FDD statements. FDD is straight up an Israeli cutout. That's all it is. Its original name was called Emet, which means truth in Hebrew. Its stated goal when it was incepted was to do advocacy for Israel in the United States of America. This is not a secret. So just understand that when the admin is doing that and hiring an FDD guy, it's very obvious. Yeah, Trump having as negotiating team Nick Stewart from FDD Action joining Witkoff's Peace Missions Office. Like, that is an Israeli agent, okay? Yes. FDD was founded in 2001 as Emet, Hebrew for truth. And in their initial IRS filings, they wrote, not Hudson, not the Washington Post, they wrote that their purpose was to provide education to enhance Israel's image in North America. One is welcome to believe that a group that explicitly states its purpose for existing to enhance Israel's image in North America does not advocate for Israel's interests, but this would not be a credible position. Now we know you aren't a golem, because if you were saying Emet would have caused you to self-destruct. Is that like Hebrew lore? Is that Emet is a reference to the golem of Prague, the clay defender of the Jewish? Oh, you mean John Fetterman? He can't say Emet. Make Fetterman say it. He'll collapse. Yeah, now we know the secret words. Anyway, so it's very clear that Israel has... He can't say, that's John Fetterman actually can't say it though, because he's a stroke victim. So he's like OP. His clay golem ass will never fall apart. He'd be like, M-M-A-T? John Fetterman trying to say Mehmet Oz, accidentally says Emmet Oz, and then perishes on the spot. Emmet Oz? Oh, no!
Out of it. He declares we're having a ceasefire. This was 4 weeks in. He says we're having a ceasefire and we're having these talks and they're going great and we're going to open the strait. And Iran says, yeah, one of our conditions is Israel's got to pull back from southern Lebanon. You can't use the Iran war as a pretext for stealing more land from a sovereign country. That's not your country. Like, no. And it's not just Iran who felt that way. I think the rest of the world's like, what are you doing? I thought we were, fighting the great existential threat, Iran, and now you're taking the opportunity to take Lebanon shore of the Litani River and bombing downtown Beirut. Like, what is this? Anyway, this was all very well known. And within hours of announcing this, Trump announcing this, Israel publicly, in a way that was designed to get the attention of everyone, including the Iranians, starts killing civilians in Lebanon. Now, what was the point of that? Not to secure the Israeli homeland. The point of that was to end any talk of a negotiated settlement, to keep this going until Iran was destroyed and chaotic, which is the Israeli goal. I'm not attacking Israel by saying that. Their goals are different from ours. They're a different country.
Yeah, they would argue, of course, that what they are doing is neutralizing the threat that has been persistent in Lebanon through Hezbollah.
Oh, okay. But, I mean, they invaded Lebanon in 1982. Okay, so that was 44 years ago. They've had a lot of experience in Lebanon, a lot. They've had a lot of time to fix Lebanon. They killed Nasrallah. They blew up Hezbollah with explosive.
Again, Israel's evil is so severe and so flagrant that Tucker Carlson, an American fascist, can make decent commentary on it and look like the good guy in comparison when he's objectively not the good guy. Just because he might be the better guy comparably to Israel in this equation doesn't mean that he is a good guy at all. The other problem here is that you can't talk to Tucker Carlson as a liberal Zionist. This is the exact same issue that The Economist ran into. If you put a liberal Zionist in front of Tucker Carlson, that is the easiest environment for Tucker Carlson to win, for Tucker Carlson to look great in comparison to even the New York Times. You have to put an anti-Zionist in front of Tucker Carlson. That's the only way to highlight the contradictions.
Pagers, like they've done a lot since October 7th in Lebanon. They chose that moment to derail the negotiations, and they've done this repeatedly. And so my perspective as an American is, look, we're the United States. We're a country of 350 million people. You are wholly dependent on us. You're a country of 9 million people with no natural resources. I'm not against you, but like we're not co-equals here. But the point I'm making is Trump could not restrain Netanyahu. Netanyahu is the one person Trump could not say, hey, settle down, or we'll just defund you and your country will collapse in about 10 minutes, which is true. Israel can't defend itself.
Take my blade!
Despite whatever propaganda you may have heard. So, again, it's not an attack on Israel. It's an attack.
Mehdi Hassan, oh my God. Oh my God. Someone like myself would do very well, I think, in front of Tucker Carlson, but Mehdi Hassan is like the perfect antidote. Okay? That would be like the perfect counter. Especially because Mehdi is like liberal enough too. Tucker would never do it. Tucker won't even talk to me.
Attack on American leadership for not constraining its partner in a way that helps the United States. Trump said, I want a negotiated settlement. Israel stopped the settlement. Trump refused to even criticize Netanyahu in public. Are you joking? That's slavery. That is total control of one man by another. And it's, that's between Trump and Bibi and God, as far as I'm concerned. But as an American, that's our president, our elected president, whose job is to protect our country and our interests and our economy. And he is looking out for Israel first. That's outrageous. And no amount of
your fate is sealed.
Which I'm not, and I'm never going to be, is going to stop me from noting that that's outrageous. It is outrageous.
Before we just move on, I am curious about this point, which is obviously Israel has tried to exert its influence on a number of presidents. Many presidents have been asked.
On guard!
By the way, music to my ears. Okay? The New York Times saying that when, if you said those words, which are true, and we all know this to be true, okay? It is unbelievable to hear a New York Times journalist say those words.
You cannot escape me.
many of you only learned about Israel and the shit that it's been up to in the last couple of years. Okay? But if you've been at this game for a long time, like the idea that the New York Times would say Israel has tried to exert influence over every American president. Wow. God, the permission boundaries have expanded so much. Yeah, she said obviously. She even
we'll play one round of Conquest since we unlocked it. I don't know anything about it yet as far as the maps go.
Obvious to me. You say that 4 years ago, you're going to anti-Semitism prison, okay? You say that 4 years ago, you are never having a career. Your media career is over. If you say that at the Jiffy Lube, your job at the Jiffy Lube is over. You can't work for another auto mechanic for the rest of your dang life. You gotta move different zip codes.
That Jormungandr skin is so
Canary
cursed.
Mission's coming after you. They're doxing you. They're doxing your family. They're doxing your dog, okay? So the fact that the New York Times, the paper of record, and its representative is openly saying, obviously, oof, times have changed.
To decapitate Iran, to do a joint military operation in the Middle East, which this is the first time really that this has happened, where the United States and Israel are doing a joint military operation against a Muslim country. And I'm just wondering why you think other presidents didn't have that influence, because they obviously were subjected to the same pressures, the same donors, the same Bibi Netanyahu has been there since the 90s. I mean, what do you think has materially changed that made Trump more susceptible to that influence?
I mean, that's kind of the question that I would like answered, and I don't know the answer as noted. But you know, one argument could be, well, Trump's just a complete weak. Okay. But that was not my question. I think Trump obviously has weaknesses, and a lot of his posture is compensatory, of course. I'm not interested in psychoanalyzing Trump, but that's just clear. But what was it about this moment that allowed a foreign leader to have this level of influence over an American leader? And I don't know the answer, but again, I think it's worth finding out. I would also note that, and this is not a defense of Trump, hardly, this is the single most foolish thing any American president has ever done, in my opinion. I say that with sadness.
I'm serious when I say this. I think Tucker Carlson's defending Trump here.
I'm finally here.
I know to the untrained eye, it looks like he's cooking Trump. But now that I've heard him expand, now that I'm hearing him expand on the idea that Trump is a slave, because when I say Trump is a slave to Israel, like my assessment is not, oh, Trump is technically right. Tucker Carlson, on the other hand, is very clearly designing this narrative that, like, Trump actually didn't want to do this at all, and was somehow a victim, was somehow forced into this. We'll see how Trump responds to this interview, too. I want to know.
I don't want to steal that shit from him.
Have put Israel's interests before our own. I would say the Iraq War was a very obvious example of that. I mean,
he's not defending Trump. He's extending sympathy for his base. I think he's not extending sympathy, but you're right. You're right there. He's trying to maintain the base for what comes next.
Cheney's office was completely controlled, and I knew almost all of them by people who were putting Israel's interests above America's interests. So I think the Iraq War was, to a great extent, a product of that. And I believe that Trump felt exactly the same way, because I talked to him about it a lot. So, like, what changed about Trump? What changed after 10 years, more than 10 years, of telling us our leadership is weak, they act against our interests, they're stupid, they're foolish, they're bought off by foreign powers and by domestic donors? I mean, that was Trump's case. That was his whole pitch. That's why he got elected. To switch on something this big in the space of a few.
I've never played this guide. I'm gonna look her up.
Minions have spawned.
Hello, hope you guys are doing well, and welcome to my Smite 2 Newt guide. Newt, the goddess of the sky, descends onto the battleground as a living constellation, bending cosmic forces to her will and turning the heavens themselves into weapons. Every arrow, every spell, every moment feels deliberate, measured, almost as if the stars aligned just before catastrophe. What truly sets Newt apart is her versatility. Her kit actively changes depending on how you build her, allowing her to function as a high damage spellcaster, a sustained auto attack threat, or even a utility focused support. Mastering Newt isn't just about mechanical skill, it's about understanding her flux system, adapting your playstyle on the fly, and making intelligent decisions that shape how your kit performs throughout the match. And today I'll be teaching you absolutely everything you need to know to master Newt, the celestial embodiment of cosmic control.
Already, girl?
Don't forget to subscribe with notifications on so you don't miss my future Smite 2 guide. I will be covering all of the characters in Smite 2. Also do check out the Discord server for discussions and family-friendly, toxic-free Smite community. Now let's dive right into Newt's ability. Starting off, Newt's passive is Flux, and this is the core mechanic that makes her one of the most versatile gods in Smite 2. Depending on whether your strength or intelligence is higher, Newt generates different types of flux that change how her kit functions. When strength exceeds intelligence, ability hits grant stellar flux, which will provide a decaying stack of attacks. When intelligence exceeds strength, basic attacks grant astral flux. Abilities consume this for bonus magical damage and effect. Regardless of whether you're stacking stellar flux or astral flux, you will have a maximum of 1 stack.
Your left tower is
Moving
under
on,
attack.
Newt's first ability is Convergent. When active, Newt's basic attacks fire additional projectiles that deal magical damage and pass through all enemies. This ability is a massive source of sustained damage and wave pressure, especially when paired with proper flux management. A crucial detail to understand is that Convergence itself is not affected by attack speed. The projectiles fired at fixed rate. However, attack speed directly impacts how quickly you can generate flux stacks. More attack speed means more charges, more uptime, and more total projectiles over the course of a fight. When focusing on a strength build, this ability defines Newt's DPS identity and should be prioritized first. When going an intelligence-based build, this ability will consume your astral flux stacks and reduce the enemy's protection. Moving right along to Newt's second ability, Crashing Comet. Newt will call down a comet that deals heavy magical damage at the impact point, with reduced damage in the surrounding area. Enemies caught in the center are rooted, while enemies near the edges are crumbled. When Astral Flux is consumed, this comet echoes, repeating its damage and crowd control.
That's cool.
This ability gives Newt strong area control, reliable lockdown, and excellent setup for follow-up damage. It's one of her most impactful tools for punishing grouped enemies and controlling space and teamfight. Moving on, Newt's third ability is Warp. Newt teleports in the direction she is currently moving while firing homing projectiles at nearby enemies, doing magical damage and applying a stacking flow. Warp serves multiple purposes at once, the ability to heal, chase potential, and damage. When building strength, Warp will reset Convergence and grant additional ammo, or consume Astral Flux when building intelligence to fire extra projectiles. Flux allows Newt to position aggressively or defensively while continuing to apply pressure, making her extremely difficult to pin down when played correctly. And finally, Newt's fourth ability is Skyfall. Newt becomes crowd control immune and ascends into the sky before launching a massive black hole that deals heavy magical damage, detonates, and deals additional damage while pulling enemies towards the center. Each enemy god hit grants flux, immediately Skyfall is both a devastating damage tool and a powerful fight initiator. It excels at controlling space, punishing grouped enemies, and setting up massive follow-up damage from either your team or Convergence and Crashing Comet combo. Now that you understand how Newt's abilities and flux system work
really
together,
good, actually.
let's cover how to best
I don't like her hair.
That's the ability combo.
This shit ugly.
Newt technically only has one skill combo that can make use of, but the way you execute it changes slightly depending on her ability. This flexibility is intentional. The combo adapts to her stats just like her kit. Before anything else, this needs to be crystal clear. Weaving auto attacks from the ability is mandatory. Auto attacks flux, and flux is when lost in its damage. This is the single biggest difference between an average Newt and a great one. When building a strength-focused build, start by activating Convergence first to get immediate value and begin dealing damage. Then weave in an auto attack, use Warp, weave another auto attack, and cast Crashing Comet for crowd control and burst. As the fight continues, end the combo by reactivating Convergence again, taking advantage of the reset to extend your damage window and overwhelm the target. When building an intelligence-focused build, it's very important that you always keep in mind where your astral flux stacks are going.
Shit about wards.
And depending on how many you have or what the situation is, you might want to use different abilities first, considering that ability will be the one that consumes the stack. For example, if the enemy is already locked down, then you can start with Crashing Comet so you can take advantage of the bonus damage from activation. If you're fighting a tankier character, then you might want to start with Convergence, that way you can recognize what you need for a specific situation and alter the combo accordingly. Well, I could sit here and name all of the possible combinations that you might want to use for the combos, all of the different orders depending on the different situations you might find yourself in and the different people you might be fighting. I think his character's combos are just as versatile as her build, right? Depending on what you need in the moment, you're going to fight a different build in different orders. Just like what the team needs, you might build differently and ultimately that way. This isn't a rigid script combo. You may skip work that you've already positioned, delay Crashing Comet, crowd control, or ultimate convergence depending on the situation. What matters most is staying flexible, adapting to your build, and never stop your auto-attacking in between abilities. However, if you do want to watch some of these combos in action, check out my channel where I've already posted some new gameplay showcasing these builds and combos in real matches. And also consider following me on Twitch for live gameplay with play-by-play commentary and the chance to ask questions. Ask me questions directly. Now that you know how to use Smite in combat, let's talk about where she fits best in the battle. Smite really shines in the mid-range, long-range damage, strong wave clear, and ability to control space, and nightmare deploy. The Flux system rewards constant pressure and smart positioning, both of which the mid laner enables perfectly. For mid, Newt can fully leverage her burst, sustain damage, and teamfight control, making her the strongest and most consistent role. In a similar manner, Newt is also a great key role in building strength. Sustained DPS, and core positioning allow her to thrive in longer fights. With the correct build, she will shred frontliners while still being quite threatening to the backliners. While her learning curve is steeper than traditional ADC, she rewards players who master her training. When the turn moves aspect on, she becomes a very strong support option. Her crowd control, area denial, and utility-heavy abilities allow her to peel and control fight effectively. As her playstyle shifts away from raw damage, she still provides her immense value in space control, also offering her team CC immunity, which is oftentimes going to be invaluable. Newt can function in the jungle, but it's not where she excels. She has decent clear and gank potential, but her lack of instant burst damage and on passive make her less reliable than traditional assassins in this role. It can work, but it's not optimal, and also when you consider that her ultimate will take her back to the place that you're looking to fight her from, you need to use it again. Newt struggles heavily in the solo lane. She lacks the durability, sustain, and needed to survive extended solo matchups. Playing her here limits her strengths and exposes her weaknesses, so it's best to avoid this role altogether. Although do note that these are just suggestions. If you find a way to make a certain character work with a certain build and playstyle, go for it. Now that you understand where you will be playing Newt, let's talk about what you will be building. I can't give you an exact build for Newt, as items Smite too often go through changes and fall in and out of the meta, but I can tell you which stats to focus on and suggest. In the mid lane, Newt wants to lean heavily into intelligence, cooldown reduction, and tank shred to maximize their
speed boost and come here, fool.
Teamfight impact. For intelligence, items like Off, Boomer, and Booty are all excellent options, giving it strong scaling and high burst potential. For cooldown reduction, you can clear items like minus bleeding, focus, and spear of desolation to ensure your abilities are available. For tank shred, items such as Obsidian Shard, Soul Reaver, and Totem of Death allow Newt to stay effective against combat targets and scale well into the late game. This build emphasizes spellcasting, burst windows, and strong area control through Newt's Flux interactions. When building Newt as an ADC, the focus shifts towards strength, attack speed, and sustained damage, with the option to transition into either a on-hit shred or critical shred. If you're going to be building a Bloodflow, items like Devil Gloves with Pallion and Bloodforge are great options that help you stay healthy in a standard fight. For attack speed, items like Dagger Frenzy, Sunbeam Bow, Odysseus Bow, Tear Queen, Daddy's Heart, so on and so forth are all great options. For tank shred, items like the Executioner and Prince Blade are ideal, and for critical strike chance, Demon Blade and Deathbringer stand out as high impact options. When building Newt as a support, your focus shifts away from raw damage and towards health protections and cooldown reduction alongside team utility. For your core starting tank option, you have Prophetic Cloak, Spirit Robe, or Gauntlet of Thieves, whenever they decide to buff that item. These items will offer you survivability needed to stay in fight and consistently apply upgrades with your system. For cooldown and utility, items like Cersei's Headstone, Screeching Gargoyle, and Thunder's Grace are excellent choices of many because the support items that offer utility or CC are quite extensive. And we have some team-oriented utility items like Stampede, Animated Storm, and Mountain of Discord, which will offer strong damage, tankiness, and powerful effects. It's important to remember that tank items are very expensive. There is no single correct support build. Your choice should always change based on your situation, your team's needs, and the enemy team's composition. As a support, it's your responsibility to build for the team and to actually follow the team as well. Keep that mindset, and Newt support becomes far more impactful than people expect. Now that you know exactly what to build, let's go over some tips and tricks that will help you the next time you play Newt. I already mentioned you should be weaving auto attacks between abilities, regardless of the build. No matter how you build Newt, auto attacks are essential. They generate fluff for your abilities and dramatically increase your overall damage output. Skipping auto attacks breaks the flow of your kit and limits your potential, so always maintain the rhythm of auto attack ability auto attack whenever possible. My second tip is to be aware of your flux stacks and play around them. Newt stacks is the foundation of your kit. Sometimes it's smart to build up flux stacks before committing to a fight or using key abilities, while other times your current stacks may change which abilities you use first. Managing flux correctly can completely alter your damage patterns and ability sequencing. My third tip is to always be mindful of what your build path does to your kit. Whether you're building intelligence or strength, your build directly changes how Newt functions. Your damage profile, combo flow, and role in team fights all shift depending on your stat. Play in a way that complements your build instead of forcing you to stay in a place. And finally, adapt to what your team actually needs. It's fine to have great Newt profile, but flexibility is what wins games. If your team already has a burst damage dealer, sustained DPS may be more valuable. If you're lacking burst or advanced control, adjust accordingly. You don't need 2 mid laners or 2 ADCs. The strongest teams balance both.
Your middle tower is
and
under
that brings us to the end of the Nuke guide. I'm sorry this one was a little bit longer than usual, but this character has about a billion different ways you can play her. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to check out my other Smite 2 guide, subscribe for more content. If you have any questions, join my Discord server for tips and tricks, and a friendly, toxic-free Smite community. And finally, follow me on Twitch if you want to watch me play Smite live or ask any questions. With that being said, subscribe, all of those things. And as always, thanks for watching. See you next time. Love you. Bye.
We traded.
Oh my god. Okay, never mind. Take it back. He's fucking unbearable from the start, dude. And John Adams is dope. I'm just saying that, like, doing that as a 5-year-old, you are a turbo dork, okay? It was already predestined that he was always gonna be a fucking dweeb.
Crazy he spawned faster than me.
Cuba.
Instituting significant layoffs. There was a time when Ben Shapiro could reasonably call himself the king of all conservative media. That's all over now.
I'm not even kidding. I'm a little worried that because the UK banned me, I'm worried that the Commonwealth is going to do the same. And I plan on going to Australia in the upcoming year. A girl shower is hours long where we wash our hair, shave our whole entire bodies, exfoliate and wash our face, and every crevice gosh is on. Have you ever talked to a woman? Oh, that's the girl shower. It's the opposite. It's not short, it's long.
Oh, they surrender?
I can't help but
Not
notice
cool.
that the online world has become increasingly intertwined with mainstream politics lately.
You will be, in the not-too-distant future, running for political office. And you have my complete and total endorsement.
Influencers who once had nothing to do with such polarizing issues have since flung themselves headfirst into the most contentious political matters of the day. Whether driven by clout or by ideological purposes, the fact is, more and more influencers are beginning to play a larger role in the events that shape our history.
I want to thank the Nelk Boys, Aiden Ross, Theo Vaughn.
If you had told me 5 years ago that Kyle and Steiny of the Nelk Boys would have had a hand in whitewashing a genocide by granting a war criminal a softball interview on their Happy Dad sponsored podcast, I probably would have had some kind of severe medical episode. I mean, even now it's hard to comprehend that being a real thing that happened.
Burger King. I like Burger King more.
What's your go-to at McDonald's?
No, I'll tell you Burger King. We did the, the
Whopper?
I
haven't ripped Burger King in a long time. Burger King kind of sucks.
Yeah.
No,
the
you're wrong.
BK Lounge can hit.
I disagree completely.
You like Burger King over McDonald's?
That's your worst take, I think.
Absolutely.
That's a crazy take.
Damn, such a hard-hitting journalism from the same
That's your
guys
worst
who got
take.
Nelk picking up hot girls in Miami and taking a virgin to the club. Because as refreshing as it might sound to have more people engage directly with the governments and policies that shape our existence, I can't help but think we're sort of being led down the road to hell by some of the least qualified grifters to walk the planet.
You openly admitted you never do research or read articles outside of Twitter. How can you shamelessly tell others to read more? I don't need to understand whatever article you want me to read.
This is one of the most goated Asmephestoh quotes where he's like, I don't need to read, bro. I know everything.
I don't need to
Why
read
does her hair look so
your
bad?
special book or your Wikipedia.
They need to bring her
article or anything
swoop
else
bag.
besides that.
What the fuck?
None of that stuff matters.
Somehow one of the largest political commentators on Twitch, by the way. That's not discouraging or terrifying at all, is it?
wrong with her hair?
Shut up. I washed my hands 3 weeks ago.
3?
Yeah, I'm fine. What are you talking about wash my hands for?
The idea that an official Twitter account of the U.S. military
fuck?
would be using words like low cortisol and lethality maxing just weeks before launching a regional war in the Middle East is a bone-chilling reality, but it's the one we're living in. Awesome. The political landscape is shifting underneath us as we speak, which can come with serious consequences, especially as online punditry moves further into the extreme.
Women are made to be f***ed, literally. That is what it is. Women are either mothers, whores, or nuns. No other options.
Last time I was in Korea, I was tired of pretending to all the time. You're all slanty eyes. You're all Japan, Korea.
We've talked a lot on this channel about these guys. The loose ensemble of kick streamers and other online provocateurs ushering in a new era of reactionary politics, united not by a single outward ideology, but by a shared desire to build and maintain a personal brand. In their quest to create viral moments that keep themselves at the top of everyone's feeds, they've increasingly resorted to saying and doing more unhinged things. These guys are mostly funded by their audiences, meaning they're far less dependent on advertisers than traditional mainstream personalities, and have little to no
Brian Kilme just called you a champagne socialist on Fox 250. That's amazing. Rather a champagne socialist than champagne fascist like Brian is. Yeah.
I'm Brian Kilme. I'm Brian Kilme. I'm Brian Kilme. I'm Brian Kilme.
Dan told me he now wants to go for Northern Lion for one of their shows coming up in the winter. We're gonna fly out and fangirl and hype mog him. Northern Lion? Brian Kilme. I don't even know if I'm allowed back into Canada. So, dog, it sounded like you said that was a pinky out. Northern Line mogs you every day. I mean, I can hype mog him though, like Dan Beckner did. Why are they talking about you on this special occasion? Is it to distract from the event being postponed? Yeah, it's pretty crazy that Brian Kilme's talking about me on America's 250th birthday on the Patriotic channel. Damn, these guys have a lot of angst, I guess. All right, let's get back to Benny Hanna.
To temper their rhetoric.
I'm Candace Owens' biological mom. Right. She is my biological son.
Battle ready.
And we're gonna get married.
Moreover, the billionaires who keep the lights on at Kick and Rumble are hardly interested in reining in the wild rhetoric so long as it continues to generate traffic. After all, much of their appeal stems from a perceived willingness to speak their minds, a supposedly moral commitment to tell it like it is, which, of course, only opens the door for more controversial moments, more clicks, more attention, and more money. Rinse and repeat. This less organized, less restrained, and in some cases, less explicitly political band of influencers with their fingers on the pulse of online culture and
I don't know what the
younger,
point of
more energetic fan base at their disposal has set fire to the old guard of mainstream conservatism. And perhaps no organization better embodies that old guard than the Daily Wire and its most recognizable figure, Ben Shapiro. Since about 2016, Ben Shapiro has been a dominant force in the conservative ecosystem, traveling around the country, owning every woke, blue-haired college liberal that dared challenge his intellect, or intellect. Does that work? I don't know. In 2017, the New York Times bestowed upon Ben Shapiro the title of Provocative Gladiator, a conservative wonder kid with mechanical intelligence, as put by the League in 2018. People off, man. Ben quickly rose to prominence as a right-wing firebrand during Trump 1.0, before gliding off the right-wing outrage machine most potent during the Biden administration, expanding his reach and making money hand over fist even as recently as 2023, when the Daily Wire finished out that year with a profit of more than $200 million in top-line revenue. For all intents and purposes, Ben Shapiro's media...
You will never convince me that this wasn't base boosted by billionaires, by the way. I will never believe that. Okay, I think all conservative media properties are straight up getting money funneled on the revenue side that looks as though it's just like individual subscriptions and donations and whatnot, but it's actually coming straight up from billionaire donations. What is this? Hassan discovers Quentin reviews. And this is my favorite thing to have on stream in a while. Hassan complaining about Quentin's long videos, only to realize his own reaction to the context peep was 9 hours long.
Empire was poised for unprecedented growth.
Remember when PewDiePie had him on meme review? Yes, I do remember. God, it was so ass. God, the internet was so ass. And then there was like a brief moment of solace, but it was still ass because the wokes were too woke. And then, which I much prefer to the current situation. And now it's so much worse.
But today, those prospects look a little different. One glance at Ben Shapiro's 7 million subscriber
gonna girl shower to this stream right now? Hell yeah.
YouTube channel will tell you that Ben has seen some better days. Some much better days. The Washington Post just reported in May that Ben's views have plunged nearly 70% since the end of 2024, triggering a wave of mass layoffs amidst the inner turmoil. Daily Wire spokesperson Chad Bishop told the Post they had to cut 30% of their employees since the beginning of this year alone, which comes after a previous round of layoffs the company was forced to enact last year, shortly after their co-founder Jeremy Boring stepped down as CEO. Now they've even lost the guy who replaced him, meaning the future of the company is now less good than ever. This also comes as Ben's former friends and allies are running circles around him. He now finds himself outpaced by the likes of Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, and even his former acolyte Candace Owens, who continues to siphon views from her one-time employer, making for a particularly personal thorn in the Daily Wire's side.
Do I have your consent to girl shower to your gym pics, King? Okay, now it feels like you're not girl showering. Now you feel that you're saying something else. Which is definitely confusing me about girl shower.
Unlike conservative ecosystem, it's changing rapidly. Ben can't turn things around soon. He may just become a has-been. Get it? Because Because Ben, you get it? I mean, some of these videos have less than 20K views. The man is having to play Fortnite and react to TikToks, for God's sake. He is paying to run a full broadcast of his show as a pre-roll advertisements on other videos, hoping that the viewer just falls asleep and watches the whole thing on accident, I guess. I'm sure that's a winning business strategy long term, but you do you, Ben. I've contemplated a video on Ben Shapiro for years at this point. It's not like he hasn't given me a potentially endless trove of content to latch onto and attack. But as Cody Johnson said a few months ago in his video, we're at a point now where this might be the last time Ben Shapiro is even relevant enough to talk about. His predicament is a very real one, and I think it's worth examining how he went from such a rising star to a complete dud in a little under a decade. I think it speaks to the wider conservative movement that in the world of Republican politics, so-called principles aren't going to get you as far as simply reading the room. Through this lens, Ben Shapiro's demise seems all but inevitable, and I hope this video can serve as a cathartic look back on one of the most putrid careers of one of the most repulsive men on the internet. Join me in the unprecedented rise and satisfying fall of Ben Shapiro. I want to talk to you about today's sponsor, No CD. No CD is one of my absolute favorite companies to work with because it gives me a chance to talk about something that for too many years I felt I couldn't talk about at all, honestly. And that's been my experience with OCD. I've had it for about as long as I can remember, and even back when I didn't know what it was, I had already become painfully aware of the symptoms and had grown accustomed to feeling trapped. Ethical reaction, man. Ethical reaction. Talking about his OCD. It can be hard to describe OCD.
I don't know why he thought that.
He should have ran. Deal with it. But I remember being in 6th grade, feeling like I had to obsessively wash my hands over and over again until my anxious feelings went away. I would force myself to think of quote-unquote good thoughts whenever I took a test, or else I'd convince myself that I would fail. I would have to touch every light switch of every room I entered. Connection between my anxiety and rituals. Doing them wasn't going to change the outcome of something, and I knew that, but there was still this part of me that said I had to carry them out in order to feel okay. And sure, giving into the would help for a little bit until there was another one I had to do, then another one. Then another one. It was just a constant in my life for way too long. All these extremely rigid rituals began to consume me. It felt like I was being truly controlled and trapped by my compulsions until I found No CD. No CD is the world's leading treatment provider for OCD. All of the licensed therapists expect to be the main experts in OCD, so they know
Wait, did you do ERP?
Exactly what to look for and how to help. The lessons and tools my No CD therapist taught me always ring loud in my ear every time I'm about to give in to a compulsion. They made me feel heard, and I can't tell you how much of a relief it was to actually speak with a trained professional whose job it is to listen to my experiences. It will always benefit to reach out and get help, and I can tell you personally that No CD is here for you. Their therapy is 100% virtual and covered by insurance for over 138 million Americans. It also includes support with sessions, so you never have to face OCD alone. To learn more about starting OCD therapy with No CD, go to NoCD.com and book a free call with their team today. That's NoCD.com. Huge thanks to No CD for sponsoring, and now back to Ben. Benjamin Aaron Shapiro was brought into the world at the height of the Reagan era on January 15th, 1984. With 3 sisters and Reagan Republicans in the liberal city of Burbank, California. Ben's parents both enjoyed careers.
Literally violinist. Father's a violinist. Ben's a violinist. He is just like, he is a liberal in every way, shape, and form. Except he just chose to be a conservative.
Years in the field of entertainment. His mother being a top executive at a television company, with his father David working as a composer. Meaning that he was had a healthy exposure to the arts. He was described as a child prodigy by Spectator in 2018, skilled in both violin and piano, which you can judge for yourself by watching his appearance at the Israeli Vaz Banquet in 1996.
Benjamin Shapiro is 12 years old. He will play for us the theme from Schindler's List. Ladies and gentlemen, Benjamin Shapiro.
It's almost kind of sweet to see a young Ben Shapiro so passionate about something that doesn't completely suck and make people's lives worse. You know, if you ignore the glaring fact that this performance was done to benefit a fascist ethno-state, of course. But if we know anything about Ben Shapiro, it's that his love of artistic expression has never once faded, as he's continued to sharpen and refine his musical chops over the years.
Oh, God.
Gotta make the wish he had just steered clear of politics altogether and gone the route of a musician.
Bye.
Let's look at the stats.
But if a streak of creativity ran through Ben, so did a sense of unwavering patriotism. So much so that he had dressed up as John Adams every year for Halloween since the age of 5.
Oh my God. Okay, never mind. I take it back. He was unbearable from the start, dude. And John Adams is dope. I'm just saying that, like, doing that as a 5-year-old, you are a turbo dork, okay? It was already predestined that he was always going to be a dweeb.
Political discussions around the dinner table were far from uncommon in the Shapiro household, as David made sure that Ben and his sisters were sufficiently engaged with the pressing matters of the day. But that doesn't mean Ben Shapiro always pursue a career in politics. Anyone who's seen his questionable takes on
3 levels higher than me.
one battle after another, though, but aside from music, Ben has long displayed a passion for film and television.
I like his mug. Did you see his?
It also kind of doesn't make sense. John Adams being your founder, that you're like your preferable founder, does not make sense with current modern political framework. Interesting. John Adams is objectively one of the most woke. So, like, how did that happen? You know what I mean? Ben hasn't been very good at understanding people's history.
Oh, God.
Ben's cousin is actress Mara Wilson, who, as a child,
literally disowned him, by the way, so don't hold that against her. Actively dunks on Ben.
Starred in such films as Matilda, Mrs. Doubtfire, Miracle on 34th Street, and perhaps the film that most resonated with me as a child, Thomas and the Magic Railroad. His peak, honestly. Of course, it's worth noting that Ben and Mara aren't exactly on speaking terms these days, what with her political convictions being the polar opposite of his. But if you look closely at Ben Shapiro's career, you may just find a thinly veiled desire to follow in the footsteps of so many of his family.
Let me aid you.
For example, this particularly cringeworthy interview he gave in 2011.
Oh my God. Jaubrey's going back to the, this is one of my favorite interviews, where he just like straight up gets dunked on by this lady. He's like, well, don't you think you're writing a shit and that's why you couldn't make it in Hollywood? Maybe it's not. Maybe it has nothing to do with your conservative views.
Primetime propaganda, the true Hollywood story of how the left took over your TV. Wow, very subtle title there, Ben. I wonder what the book could be about. Connie Martinson brings up a time in Ben's life where he had been asked to write a TV series that Ben describes as a mix of comedy and...
Ben didn't show up. This is his entire extended family. I'm good friends with his niece and no embarrassing facts about him. Ben didn't show up to his grandma's 100th birthday or her funeral, which I assume shortly followed his birthday. Waiting for that to go. That's crazy though.
Was that comedy? Was it sitcom?
That made it seem like chatter. It made it seem like it was being hard.
I've written a couple of comedies, kind of hour-long dramedies.
And have they been watched?
No, because and there are a couple of reasons for that.
No, okay, so what do you think was the reason, Ben?
One is that period, you know, regardless of political viewpoint. And the other is that, yeah, and it's like a breakout series right from the get-go, right? I mean, it's hard to tell a spec script. He stars a baby writer. I mean, you know the process.
Yeah.
And the one thing above all that Hollywood does right now that is utterly despicable is that they keep people who are not of their political ilk out of the business. Period.
My Chiron is so bad. I'm not gonna hold you.
Confrontational interview. back down and asserting what we're probably all thinking. That Ben Shapiro killed his mother.
I know what I'm thinking. Hollywood is anti-Semitic. And I'm not afraid to say it.
Conservatives are kicked out of the writers' room for being conservative and being unfunny. She even cites her husband, a conservative who found success in Hollywood, as a prime example
Your right
of this.
tower is under
I
attack.
find that a little hard to believe because,
Look at the tape.
well, I'd like to see the tape, only because my husband, who's conservative, was a very famous surrender at a certain point. And I just try to think of being Democrat or Republican or whatever, very
Your
rarely
left tower
came into
is
the
under
conversation.
I won't let you down.
Well, I mean,
They've been taking a bit of a detour minor debate about conservatives advocating against abortion, but then failing to provide child-friendly social services once they've left the womb. A conversation that we are remarkably still having today.
I do know, having talked with some of the ultra-conservatives, that they are very concerned, as you said, about but they don't care about schooling, where the government would come in and definitely no action.
I mean, these seem to be kind of separate issues to me. I mean, you can be for the not killing of fetuses or babies, and, you know, and also be for.
Oh, back then when he didn't have, he didn't have the messaging discipline. He accidentally said fetuses and then corrected himself. Said, I mean babies. I mean babies. Woke. Classic. This is just like when there's like a compilation out there of this girl like accidentally correctly misgendering trans women over and over again, only to stop himself and then misgender them deliberately.
That's government intervention in education. We're spending a ton of money on education. Our education has been consistently worse every year for the last 50. So the correlation between government spending and better levels of education is completely misplaced.
Well, I was thinking in terms of the free food lunch for kids who don't have food at home. Anyhow, let's get back to television.
Your right tower some more over the politics of shows like All in the Family and MASH. Ben suggests that Hollywood was much more moderate in the 50s and 60s before the sinister turn of events becoming liberal sometime in the 1970s, as if it were some carefully coordinated conspiracy or something, and not just a reflection of where the country was politically at that time. But I think it's fascinating that Ben essentially admits here that he had tried to get a television show off the ground at one point, only to be turned away because, in his words, his politics would be unsavory. Now, what I wouldn't give to actually read any of what he wrote for that TV show that never made it to production, I think there's ample evidence.
Yeah, Ben Shapiro being Orthodox Jew who's anti-abortion, he's so Christ-cucked, it's not even funny. Like, buddy, why are you anti-abortion? Why are you Christ-cucked? This makes no sense. It's not even a part of your religion.
Evidence that conservatives have been able to find work in Hollywood, assuming they're actually good in what they do. I mean, just that year alone, Norm Macdonald was able to launch a new show on Comedy Central. It's not like Norm had ever been shy about his political leanings. He was just talented regardless, and therefore was able to have a long and fruitful career in entertainment. Even to this day, he is highly regarded by industry leaders across the board. Despite being a long-time conservative, I'm just highly skeptical about Shapiro's theory that conservatives being turned away en masse on account of their political convictions alone, that his attempts to break into the industry failed in any way because of his politics. Seems to be like more of a convenient excuse for not being more talented. And I refuse to believe otherwise until Ben lets us see those amazing comedy strips he wrote. Release the Shapiro cut, Ben, and the world needs it. But not everybody disagreed with the central argument of Ben's book. Turns out there were a few key men living around Los Angeles at the time who felt similarly dejected by liberal Hollywood elites. One was a fringe producer by the name of Jeremy Bourne. Perhaps best known, in the words of Vanity Fair, for helping to produce Etienne, a buddy movie about a dying dwarf hamster. Yeah, I think I speak for everyone when I say we've all seen that one. Would it surprise you to learn that it's now found a home on Tubi? Wait, hang on. Rating is what exactly? After moving out west from a small town in Texas, Warren became friends with star of the TV show.
Why are you fighting him?
Titular character in the DC franchise Shazam, and esteemed Fortnite Friday guest Zachary Levi, who he would accompany to the Chuck set during the late 2000s. Warren told Vanity Fair one mindset changed that always stuck with him. One day, I
losers, man.
A very well-known actress who was one of the stars of that show stopped me and said, "Hey, is that your Bush Cheney bumper sticker on that pickup in the parking lot?" I said, yes ma'am. She said, "Kid, you've got balls of steel." Honest truth.
That's the real story. Name a better combo, dude. Oh my god.
I can't waste it.
Oh my god. Yo, it's so perfect.
Completely lost on it. And just like that, Boring became
The chalk hasn't died at all?
In the car. And then we pipe on after. That's the real
Who's he been fighting?
Of a silent underbelly of the Hollywood machine. Conservatives did exist in LA. They just weren't as vocal as the liberals may have been. He soon joined a networking group called Friends of Abe, by the New York Times as a collection of perhaps 1,500
enemy team has destroyed
players
the
in
Gold
the entertainment industry, which is where he got to know Andrew Breitbart, the bomb-throwing reactionary founder of Breitbart News. Breitbart famously used to say that politics is downstream from culture. It was sort of his guiding principle when honing attacks on the left. Breitbart felt that if conservatives could penetrate the world of film,
literally just the opposite of reverse Gramsci.
Film, TV, and music, they could then mold political consciousness in their favor. Perhaps it's no surprise then that Breitbart hired a 28-year-old Ben Shapiro to become the outlet's editor-at-large in 2012, just weeks ahead of Andrew Breitbart's death on March 1st. That year. Replaced by Steve Bannon, the continuation of Andrew Breitbart's legacy was already well known, considering it was him who introduced Jeremy Boring to Ben Shapiro a few years earlier. The two men would start in in October of 2013, founding another in 2015. They called it The Daily Wire. Within just 14 months of bursting onto the scene, Ben Shapiro and Jeremy Boring...
Never forget when Ben Shapiro was working at Breitbart had black crime tab. As in, whenever a black person did a crime, it would get featured on the Breitbart black crime tab. Not crime,
Stick
black
together now,
crime,
friends.
specifically.
Don't lose hope.
Ben Shapiro later left Breitbart after Breitbart hired, Steve Bannon hired Milo Yiannopoulos to lean into the Gamergate stuff to make gamers even more reactionary, which inevitably led to the likes of Asmongold. Ben Shapiro left in that period because Milo Yiannopoulos was outed as being an anti-Semite, a neo-Nazi, and Ben Shapiro thought, well, that's a bridge too far. Which, ironically enough, is a fun little story about his career as well. Ben Shapiro's always been Mr. Anti-woke, anti-DEI, except for people who are pro-Israel. And I don't even mean Jews, even though he does care about anti-Semitism, clearly. Regardless of the fact that he doesn't care about any other form of bigotry and is a champion of all different sorts of bigotry. He clearly found Breitbart's anti-Semitism to be a bridge too far at the time.
Should mention, like, to call himself the God King of the website, in case you felt like cringing out of your skin today.
Do you remember when there were two genders and only 1.5 of them had to shave their mustaches?
We're able to boast that the Daily Wire had become cash flow positive nearly a full year ahead of schedule. They like to brag that they didn't need any outside financial backers to do it, but that's probably...
I guess after Ben left and they brought the black crime tab back,
because their venture had always been propped up by billionaire fracking tycoon Ferris Wilks, a noted Christian nationalist who fueled the Daily Wire's launch to the tune of $4.7 billion as a part of his brother James' regulations and taxes for the wealthy, the government toward Christian rule, seeking to eliminate the distinction between church and state, calling itself a enemy self-funding business on its website. The Daily Wire addressed its oil-baron ties by desperately arguing that as of July 2020, neither Shapiro nor Boring have ever met with Dan Wilkes or received any money from Wilkes Brothers LLC, which doesn't stop besides detractors from braying about how the company is bought and paid for.
I don't know, this Athena skin looks lovely.
Wilkes Brothers sounding, we guess,
really
like
the
Koch
face,
brothers, and thus more nefarious to leftist
what they did to the front part, the face, and
you guys clearly aren't mad about it, but don't let the criticism
shame.
get to you. Clearly, if it's the longest
face and the hair,
paragraph of
they
your
need to fix
entire
that shit.
about page. Also, how can you blame anybody for
If
braying
they put weight
when
on
you
it,
are
I'm confused
quite
what happened.
literally bought and paid for by at least one Wilkes brother? I mean, it's just the truth. The least you can do is
An
own
enemy
it.
has
But what
left the game.
exactly did they do with that generous donation? Well, at the same time they were pumping out article after article on their website, some of their 2015 headlines included such gems as Congressional Democrat, 1 in 5 Muslims willing to start jihad for Battlefield. Democrats love cursing. Here are the top 5 leftist potty mouths. And the 2 reasons you shouldn't go back in time and kill baby Hitler by Ben Shapiro? Ben, you're Jewish! The Daily Wire also developed a presence on YouTube and Facebook during the time. Right now, my oldest 10-year-old criticizing Ben, GOP's primary candidate, Donald Trump, as a liar.
People forget, but Charlie Kirk was also anti-Trump. He was first to jump on the Trump train, but he was also, of course, and every other one of these operatives, vehemently anti-Trump. I believe they both like Ted Cruz more than Trump. I mean, J.D. Vance was anti-Trump later in the game. I'm just saying, Candace Owens was anti-Trump. Candace Owens was pro-Obama. Crazy. At least the other ones were like conservatives, so they just didn't like Trump because they didn't. Yeah.
Big winner? Or is he a spoiled brat who grew up in the lap of luxury, had his daddy sign his checks, and then bragged about how he is a huge winner? Trump's 3 biggest crowds are evangelicals, conservatives, and he's a winner voter. Trump is lying to all of them.
Which might be wild to see today, but back in 2015, when there were still seemingly plenty of violent contenders for the Republican nomination, Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire were actually fairly critical of the man, who would later go on to win the presidency twice. It reshaped the Republican Party in his image.
The National Mall is right now for severe weather. Shut the fuck up. Wait, is Fox News still there? Hold on. We have to is Fox News live?
Scheduled to end at 10:36 p.m.
No.
And it just it dawns on us.
Building is
under attack. For not only the
omen. What an omen.
Means critical. He has penetration already. Critical and does he have a tax speed, Bill? I don't think he does.
Possibly making it into the Guinness Book of
Transcendence.
World Records. So I'm wondering,
no, he doesn't have any attack speed.
People are pissed. Read the Bill tweet.
As someone who's lived in DC for more than 30 years,
the enemy team has destroyed the gold. Your left knee is under attack.
Evacuations underway at Freedom 250.
We ain't got no motion with
amidst
this.
severe weather notice. I can see several attendees refusing to leave the line. Antifa, baby. It's woke left sabotage. That's right. We put the weather machine up. No. Breaking. For your safety, please back away from the stage. Announcement: a storm approaches Great American State Fair in Washington, D.C. No! It's a ghost town. Now he's gonna be pissed. No! Breaking, the Great American State Fair and FIFA Fan Zone at the National Mall have been postponed and are now being cleared up. People heading for the exits now. We've seen flashes of lights that just to win. Heard one man say we waited in line for 3 hours. What are we supposed to do? The only thing that's been open and closed more times than the Great American State Fair is Jesus Christ. We live in hell now, bro. My weather station hit 124.5. Feels like temperatures today now. Flash flood warning. Dude, what the? Come on, man. How are you in any way, shape, or form an evangelical and not see the symbolism here? This is literally divine intervention. I'm not even like I'm not a spiritual person at all. It's not a secret. I've talked about it before many times over, right? But like, if I was in any way, shape, or form a religious person, a spiritual person, I would look at this and be like, perhaps I've backed the wrong horse. Perhaps God is currently telling me that this man is a demonic entity. Don't joke, Sean Hannity's ex-producer is already accusing of geoengineering the weather. Oh my God. Several hundred people have refused to leave the National Mall despite an order to evacuate because of severe inclement weather that's approaching. Some are even arguing with Secret Service agents. At one point, a crowd of people began running back towards the stage. An officer is sternly repeating the order over a bullhorn, and the crowd is booing. Many have begun chanting, USA, USA. A federal law enforcement, oh my God, they're going to do January 6th. Oh my God. Oh my God. July 4th will be the day that will be for me. Just like January 6th. Wasn't before. This is the first time. Oh, that's awesome. His fair in DC got shut down because it was too hot when he was greeted by lightning, rain, and hail at Mount Rushmore. Mother Nature hates him. Oh, true. When he was at Mount Rushmore, it was hailing. Last paragraph, go back. One man walking by blames the situation on liberals in the weather service. Adding, I think this is baloney.
Together now, friends.
Oh my God, I'm gonna die.
Okay. I think the Republicans should have went beast mode. Just let them have fun, dude. See how many of them fall in the process. This is awesome. It's so funny.
Kind of ridiculous.
Oh my God.
This is so
funny. It's better than anything I expected it to be, okay? Anyway, let's get back to Ben Shabibo.
Attacking Trump on moral grounds, and between other videos that were still very much geared toward a conservative audience. If you could
Wait, what the hell's going on at CNN? Communism News Network? They had a filthy commie on?
Last night, the spire here, the top of the Empire State Building, was blue for Taylor Swift's big wedding. But tonight, it's going to be red, white, and blue for the 250th of America.
Am I crazy? I don't think you should be wearing shorts on television.
Okay.
Unless you're, you know, engaging in an athletic endeavor. Hide the dogs, man. Hide the dogs and hide the knees. It's not. Okay. Shut up, sweet boy. What do you know? Reporter don't know about suit theory.
You have the honors of lighting up this beautiful building. So can we count down to 5? All right, let's do it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Your Tyson is under attack.
Happy Last thing I want to say is, आप कैसे हैं?
मैं ठीक हूँ, आप कैसे हैं?
Not bad. That's my Hindi speaker you who I got. Oh, that was fantastic. Look, the light, it's there.
Phoenix has beautiful red, white, and blue. Some of the colors that will be shining over.
Can you go Dawn to get a summer suit?
Last night, the spire here that
Your team has destroyed
This
the
guy
gold
starts wearing
village.
suits
You're
and
right,
police
Phoenix
clothes.
is
Keep
under
it quiet,
attack.
Unc, until you throw a tank top on for once. All right, let's get back to Ben Shabibo for now.
Hollywood wants to obscure news, and Captain America and the Nazis. This is apparently the kind of concept that $4.7 billion will get you.
This guy, by the way, is considered a leader in the Trump Alex Jones. because I don't want to go to the Twitter that often. That's why. Come on. Okay.
From the beginning, the Daily Wire sought to provide content to dejected Republican voters who, sure, hated liberals and Muslims as much as the next reactionary freak, but were still skeptical of the GOP's frontrunner. Of course, that audience proved to be a shrinking one, as Donald Trump's masked caucus after caucus, picking up scores of delegates and solidifying himself as the man to face off against the dreaded Hillary Rodham Clinton that November.
I'm just chilling.
Grappling with a Trump presidency on election night, Shapiro and Boring may very well have positioned the Daily Wire to go belly up. If it weren't for they were early to tap into. It's not that they were simply pro-Trump, but they also definitely weren't anti-Trump either, as Ben Shapiro was about to learn the value of becoming anti-Trump in 2017.
Donald J. Trump
Your
is now
middle
president
Phoenix
of the
is under
United
attack.
Darth Vader knows.
Under attack.
I was forced to. There's no way we're gonna genuinely laugh. Come on. I know it may feel. Donald Trump's first term in office provided plenty of material for mainstream liberals demonstrating their hashtag resistance to a president who they correctly identified early on as a fascist warmonger hell-bent on ushering in the American century of humiliation. I mean, I think we can say now they were pretty fucking vindicated.
I did not have fun on that one. That fucking Chiron, dude.
You had the women's marches immediately after the inauguration, a day without immigrants on February 17th, pink pussy hats were flying off the shelves, though obviously not all of America was on board, since they did go on to elect him again just 8 excruciating years later, and there were figures in the media ready to capitalize on those who looked at the resistance movement and said, huh? Ben Shapiro.
That motherfucker hard fed. Like, oh my god. Chiron's so bad.
Shapiro understood quite well that while some Americans had voted for Trump, plenty of others had voted against Hillary. They may not have particularly cared for Donald Trump the man, but they certainly hated what Hillary Clinton represented. And unfortunately, those early years also provided plenty of material for red-pilled servants of the billionaire class to traffic in their cancerous ideology through the means of smearing the left as a bunch of hysterical crybabies that were simply too immature or uneducated to understand such foundational concepts as facts and logic.
People were wearing what they were calling pussy hats, like pussy cats, but hats, okay? And these were supposed to protest Donald Trump because Donald Trump is such a sexist. If you want to drive Americans out of your camp, a quick way to do it is just keep saying things like pussy hats over and over and over, and then talking about female anatomy. A lot of these signs are super obscene. There are a lot of kids who showed up to this thing, and there are a lot of really obscene signs.
The name of the game was to hammer the left on their supposed weirdness to get as many non-political people in the door as possible. I mean, this video alone got close to 1 million views, and that was before the world had really learned who Ben Shapiro was. As liberals were pushing back against Trump, Ben was pushing back against them, laying a new foundation from which right-wing figureheads would go on to launch their attacks. A classic strategy in the world of politics is to paint the other side in the most unfavorable light imaginable. If you can show an example of one leftist being crazy, you can smear the entire left as crazy, thus drawing a distinction between them and you as the reasonable, level-headed adults in the room, especially in the eyes of normies. A cursory glance at Ben's overall channel will show you that his most popular videos don't even have Trump's name in the title. What really got him the views were his reactions to woke SJWs, his attempts to debunk woke ideology, and of course, the debates. The many, many, many debates of Ben Shapiro. I think there could easily be an entire video devoted to Ben Shapiro's disingenuous debate tactics, but that's not really what we're here to do today. Ben's debates haven't been relevant for a hot minute anyway.
Did you fall? Wait, what do you mean? Why did you scream? It was in the video, wasn't it? There was a scream in the video and you guys thought it was me? No, I was washing my hands after I put my dishes away. Heard you take a tumble? You guys are so stupid.
But if you've watched any of it yourself, you'll quickly notice a pattern. The overwhelming majority of these smackdowns took place on college campuses.
And I don't have any money right now.
Meaning this Harvard-educated, heavily politically engaged debate lord was facing off against well-intentioned college students who, unfortunately, were a little too underprepared to deal with such a weathered professional. Now, does that fact alone make Ben's positions correct? Obviously not, no. The point of these debates wasn't to be right. The point was to humiliate the opponent at all costs. You certainly don't really need to change your opponent's mind. You don't even have to be civil. This is YouTube, whatever it takes to go viral. Short, clippable moments will always be more valuable than fully fleshed out ideas and arguments.
Okay, but you're still saying these kids should like not be accepted because they don't really fit in either place? They can't just like...
I'm saying that the Boy Scouts have a standard. You must be a biological boy to be a Boy Scout. You have to be a boy.
God! Let's go! Sorry.
Alright, I'll take it off Smite now.
I got excited. When I see my goat thriving, you know what I mean? When I see my goat thriving, it's hard. It's hard for me.
You gotta leave on a loss because all this predictive fucking gaming wants you to go to and to keep playing for a win when I'm not into that engaged, optimized matchmaking. Suck my dick from the back, bitch.
That was so sick, dude.
You gave me a Chiron that threw the game. I'm low-key mad that he did that shit. God. You begged for that role. You asked to swap with me. Next time, I'm declining swaps. I'm picking the god I want to play.
Facts and logic. You want to know why Ben Shapiro's career fell off? Not just because of Israel. Israel was the final straw that broke the camel's back. You want to know why his career fell off?
I could have been a way better carry than him.
Straight
died 13 fucking times.
Everyone on his side was just like, wait a minute, why the do we care about
and
facts
he didn't
and
build
logic?
any attack speed.
We don't. Actually, no. My feelings matter far more than